The story begins a century ago, when the comeback of spiritual chi made it the main mana in the entire world. Under the buff of this chi, all living creatures began to evolve wildly in two different branches. The first path was wild, primitive pumping, harshly boosting physical fitness and endurance. The second branch of development was spiritual mutation, with an emphasis on powerful energy attacks and magic. In response, people created a ton of new professions, like the Beast Watcher with 37 million subs. A top-tier spiritual materials analyst also emerged, with an audience of 69 million subscribers. At this very moment, our protagonist is glued to the bright screen of his mobile phone. A thread about what to do if bitten by a creepy, ghostly, spiny spider is playing on the screen. There's also a bite-to-order option for a unique chance to snag top-tier S-rank loot. Reading this bite, the protagonist sadly realizes that none of this matters to him anymore. Then he quietly mutters to himself, trying not to panic. The main character recalls the creepy advice to drink boiling water and lie down in a draft so that the corpse doesn't stink later. And exactly at this very tense second, a cat's paw suddenly flashes across the frame. Smarty, the cat of 1,000 questions, looks incredibly tired of the hellish heat that reigns around him. The pet whines to Lin Yuan about the scorching heat and brazenly climbs right onto the top of our main character's head. After all, this cunning cat read somewhere that the air is always a little cooler on the high ground. Then the fluffy Smarty opens the window and begins to enjoy the fresh breeze. The cat is happy about the draft and asks the main character to drink some healing potion, to which he replies that he remembers everything anyway. After some time, our guy slowly stomps to his spiritual creatures store. Upon arrival, the main character immediately begins a very thorough and meticulous cleaning of the entire premises. While he's at it, he introduces himself to the audience, stating that his name is Lin Yuan. This boy is only 18 years old, and he runs a modest, inconspicuous shop. The guy adds that leveling pets with chi sounds like a pipe dream to him. Then the main character shows off his pets and complains about his extremely poor health since childhood. Starting at the age of 8, this boy became completely incapable of sensing the presence of chi. The main character gets a severe tilt because chi does not heal the body, and imbalanced pets are simply unavailable to him. Then Smarty notices that one of the flowers in the pot is about to die. The weed turns out to be the default jasmine lily, a low-level plant. Our main character understands that this feeble, low-grade weed is of no use to anyone on the market. In terms of value, this bush is actually worth less than even regular fodder. He recalls that since Chi's comeback, all pets have been severely categorized by tier and rarity. All the trash with stats below bronze is considered pure trash. These bottom-tier mobs aren't leveled at all due to their lack of evolution. Just like the beasts of 100 questions, whose upgraded form no one in the world has seen for a whole century. Then, a small bird flies in through the window with a gift for the main character, chirping joyfully about the delivery. The audience is told that this tiny bird is named Yin, a rare species of sonic bird. Gigi warmly thanks the bird, thinking with utter sadness about his current bottom status. He recalls how, after tying these pets, he spent 2 weeks catching hard helicopters, so the young man can safely forget about leveling them up forever. The main character opens his shop, and hopefully sits down to wait for his first customers. But even an hour later, no one has come to buy his pets. Smarty, shocked by the empty street, asks if everyone is really asleep. Our protagonist immediately begins loudly calling out to random passers-by. He yells at the crowd at the top of his lungs, actively inviting them to check out the valuable loot. A mother and daughter pass by the shop, their eyes glued to the main display. The little one tells her mother it's a beast of 100 questions, just like their kicks. Smarty greets them politely and offers to buy them some green vines, but the posh pet just laughs at him, noting his dull, dry fur. He angrily declares that what he sees is clearly trash, far below his level. Smarty gets angry in response and calls for the dispute to be settled with rock, paper, scissors. The main character quickly puts an end to this stupid conflict and calls the cat to go get some fresh air. After all, there's absolutely no trade at their bottom store anyway. Smarty happily jumps up and asks the main character to go buy some meat. The cat is sure that a couple of pieces of pork belly would have boosted his IQ significantly. then he definitely wouldn't have disappeared into that verbal skirmish like a complete noob. Sometime later, Smarty is crying bitterly over his recent loss. Yin Yin flies up and heals his morale, asking him not to tilt like that. The bird gives away the basics. Although he is dumber than his relatives, his leveling up takes a minimum of resources. Such toxic support makes the fluffy ones start to howl even louder. Meanwhile, the main character is dreaming about how awesome it would be to finally feel chi. Suddenly, Smarty yells at the main character to check the left flank. A tank-like armored pig is flying toward them at breakneck speed. The young man is shocked by this mob near the park and wonders if the pen at the farm has been breached. But the hungry cat jumps into the attack, screaming that a mountain of free meat loot has fallen right on them. The main character flies into the fray and saves Smarty from the rink, shouting at the cat whether he has decided to stupidly shoot himself out. The young man is shocked by the aggro mob because armored pigs have always been considered fully peaceful NPCs. The wild boar begins to brutally tunnel through our main character, never leaving his side. Running for his life, the guy breathes heavily from the wild debuff. GG feels incredibly tired, feeling even more nerfed today than usual. Fluffy Smarty panics and asks if Lin Yuan is okay, worried sick about his host. Suddenly, the guy's leg twists hard, and he hits the ground face first, knocked out. Before the mob hits, Yin Yin flies out to the defense, shouting that she'll shield Lin Yuan with her body. Smarty also catches the Berserker buff and instantly flies into a completely uncontrollable rage. The main character is choking and realizes that he can't go AFK, ordering his pets to run away immediately. The next second, Lin Yuan catches the teleport and spawns in a completely unknown location. The protagonist is in utter shock and is trying to find out which secret location he was thrown into. A mysterious voice suddenly calls his name, addressing Lin Yuan directly. The guy turns around sharply to check the source of this strange voice line. Behind him, a huge copper ring is levitating stupidly in the air, glowing brightly. The main character stares at this anomaly and wonders if it's the same old copper ring, the very same artifact the young man had accidentally lost his love for at the age of 8. He remembers how, after being bound with a drop of blood, this item simply vanished without a trace. The copper ring slowly floats through the air toward him, as if following a preset script. Upon touching the artifact, Lin Yuan whispers that he truly feels the comeback of his item. The main character realizes that the spiritual chi, which has been inaccessible to him since he was 8 years old, is finally coming back. The huge copper ring merges with his hand, and Lin Yuan goes AFK in the real world. Meanwhile, the pig tunnel Smarty, who, with low HP, barely survives the mob's powerful splashes. The wild tank raises his hoof, preparing to brutally one-shot poor Smarty with one hand. Yin Yin screams in panic, begging the main character to use any skill he can to save himself. The young man uses the ring, realizing that with these crumbs of mana, the casting timings are too short. The artifact begins to glow, and a powerful burst of mana suddenly buffs the protagonist's entire body. Suddenly, the boar's full stats begin to appear before the boy's eyes. It's as if an advanced RPG system has opened up before him. The main character notices that the mob is already level 3, while his pets haven't even reached level 1. The guy yells at the cat to immediately use the dash, warning of a fatal attack from the right flank. Fluffy Smarty sharply mansits to the side and miraculously dodges this deadly splash. The main character understands that even taking dodge into account, the difference in stats between them remains stupidly huge. He looks at his artifact and mutters that he urgently needs a lot more mana. He makes a wish in his head, begging this imbalance to make a contract with him. At this timing, Yin Yin casts a sound wave, preventing the mob from bullying her teammate. Lin Yuan is transfixed by this epic battle, completely shocked. Their auras match. The glow from his ring perfectly replicates the energy of the Yin Yin bird. He wonders if they are about to evolve, and if it is because of the bracelet's power. Then Yin Yin's sonic attack hits the pig, but at the same time, it also hits Smarty. Hearing this loud noise, Smarty yells at Yin Yin, asking why her voice is much louder than usual. Lin Yuan looks at them and thinks that even if they are both on the verge of evolution, The gap between the first and third level is still too big. He decides that the pig must have a weak spot somewhere. Meanwhile, Smarty continues to run away from the pig, screaming. Yin Yin is worried and asks Lin Yuan what they should do now. Lin Yuan responded firmly, ordering Yin Yin to sing something to attract the beast's attention. It was crucial that she sing as loudly as possible. Yin Yin nods nervously. Then she starts singing as loudly as she can in this situation. Lin Yuan immediately covers his ears to block out the thunderous melody, but the pig becomes enraged by Yin Yin's singing, turning its bloodshot eyes in her direction. Seeing this look, Yin Yin panics and runs away. She cries, realizing that her role here is merely to give Smarty a break. Lin Yuan shouts at Yin Yin, ordering her to turn around and attack the beast's eyes. As if it can't see, it will stop. Yin Yin agrees and asks to watch her do it, but when she tries to use her technique, for some reason it doesn't work. The bird is surprised. Lin Yuan winced in frustration as he realized the situation. He thought his spiritual power had run out at this critical moment. He clenches his fist and begs the ring to hold on just a little longer. The moment he says this, Yin Yin suddenly feels strength flowing into her again. Then she spreads her wings and attacks, her feathers cutting through the air, which is enough to distract the pig. Seeing the opening, Lin Yuan shouts to Smarty that now is his chance, and he needs to attack quickly. Smarty jumps down from Yin Yin's wings, shouting back for Lin Yuan not to worry. He claims it's Smarty himself speaking to him, and he knows perfectly well that he needs to hit the nose. He swings his paw and hits the pig right on its sensitive snout, but the pig pushes him away with a sharp and cruel push, causing Smarty's head to instantly swell. Smarty groans and asks Lin Yuan if they won this fight. Lin Yuan nods weakly, confirming victory. He says the guys were absolutely amazing. And then he collapses, passing out from exhaustion. The pig stumbles away in the other direction, and then it suddenly stops in an instant. A short distance away, a woman pushes a wheelchair with a lame old man. The man notices the pig and wonders what it's doing there. The woman takes a closer look, and her eyes widen in surprise at the discovery. She notices a lone feather stuck in the pig's body and exclaims, asking if this feather is from little Yuan's house. She quickly turns to the man, making a decision. She tells Old Li that she'll leave this to him and goes to look for little Yuan. Old Li nods. Then his eyes begin to glow an ominous red light. He whispers to his spirit being, apologizing to his old friend for disturbing him again. The scene returns to Lin Yuan, who is coming to his senses. The guy finds himself again inside the same strange place where he first summoned the ring. He recalls that ever since he first dreamed of this place, he's been wandering around here endlessly. He admits he doesn't even remember how long it lasted, but he still thanks the ring for sharing its spiritual power with him in that desperate moment. At these words, the ring begins to respond to his voice. Lin Yuan examines the glowing space, estimating its dimensions. He estimates the area to be approximately 40 to 50 square meters. He wonders if this could be the so-called inner space of a spiritual being. He addresses the ring, asking if this is Mobius's ability. A detailed description of its characteristics then appears before him. Skills, true data, reveals hidden information invisible to the naked eye. Lin Yuan thinks he's already seen what true data is capable of. Wait, he has an exclusive trait that usually only appears at bronze rank? A normal rank spirit with an exclusive trait is extremely rare. He wonders if it could be a legendary divine treasure or a fantasy rock. Then, another description appears, revealing more details. Lin Yuan reads all this and thinks, is it that now he can only make contracts with level 1 spiritual beasts? In order to make another contract, he will have to cultivate a level 1 spiritual beast to level 10. But even raising low-ranking beasts is incredibly expensive. With such expenses, even a rich man would go broke in minutes. He's already poor. Still, he decides it's better than nothing. At least now he can feel spiritual power again. Maybe things will change for the better. Then he hears a voice nearby. Someone asks the doctor why the boy hasn't woken up yet. Lin Yuan recognizes it. It's Auntie Zhang's voice. It looks like it's time for him to wake up and return to reality. Outside, Yin Yin and Smarty are shaking him, trying to wake him up. Lin Yuan opens his eyes, reassuring them. He says he's fine, and asks why they're so worried they can't even speak properly. Aunt Zhang is relieved that he's finally woken up. The doctor adds that Lin Yuan's aunt was very worried. He suggests another examination. Lin Yuan waves his hand, declining the offer, but Aunt Zhang insists. After all, he was unconscious for almost 10 hours. If he's sick, he needs treatment. Lin Yuan sighed and lay back down on the bed, giving in. Aunt Zhang and Uncle Li had always looked after him, but not until he told them about Mobius. The doctor then releases his spiritual being, a fish. This is the purifying Vibacarp. Quality and level, elite, healing abilities. After examining her, the doctor says everything seems perfectly fine. He says he'll go, as his wife is expecting him for dinner. The aunt thanks the doctor for his help. As soon as he leaves, Uncle Li's spiritual being brings dinner for Lin Yuan, informing him about the food. Aunt Zhang tells Yuan that Uncle Li prepared this nutritious meal especially for him. She jokingly adds that if he doesn't appreciate it, he shouldn't eat it at all. Lin Yuan quickly accepts the food, not daring to refuse. People sniff the food and say it smells absolutely wonderful. Looking at Uncle Li's spiritual being, Lin Yuan felt that the formidable rabbit had always been quite mysterious. He's not as fast or agile as other rabbits of his species. Deciding to test it, he activates true data, but what he sees shocks him. Everything is in questions, but he has two exclusive features, and, more importantly, he is not the terrible rabbit at all. The next morning, Lin Yuan went out for an early jog. After a while, he stopped, breathing heavily, unable to continue running any longer. He thought to himself that he had been running for an hour every day since leaving the hospital, but he admitted that such a workload was still too intense for him. Since he lacked spiritual qi, he had to train his body from scratch since childhood. He thought that perhaps he should give up combat professions and consider choosing a profession related to peaceful life. Just as he was lost in his thoughts, Uncle Li and Aunt Zhang approached him. Seeing him jogging, Uncle Li noticed that Yuan had been working out since early morning. Lin Yuan responded with a smile, confirming that he was simply trying to stay healthy. Then, unbeknownst to them, he scanned Uncle Li's leg, and data appeared before him. Name: bone-gnawing worm. Source: rotting bone worm. Seeing this, Lin Yuan thought gloomily about the situation. He knew that the rotting bone silkworm was burrowing into the flesh and sacrificing itself to form bone-eating gangrene. The fact that Uncle Li had sealed such a dangerous toxin in his shin for all these years meant that his level must be at least king rank. If this is true, then perhaps the terrible rabbit is the same, badly injured and hiding his form while recovering. When Uncle Li and Aunt Zhang were about to leave, Aunt Zhang reminded him to call if he needed anything, and asked him not to try to handle all the bills and work alone. Lin Yuan smiled in response to their concern. He asked his aunt and uncle not to worry about him. He was grateful that Uncle Li had looked after him for so long in Shaoqi. He just wished he could find a way to heal his injury, but he admitted to himself that he didn't know if he would ever be able to do so. Later, he arrived at his spiritual creature shop and scanned one of them. Looking at the data, he blinked in surprise. He wondered about the elite quality, remembering that yesterday it had been normal. He didn't understand how it had improved, and came to the conclusion that his spiritual qi wasn't simply leaking out, but was being directed into the spiritual beings, allowing them to evolve. Excited by this discovery, he clenched his fists. He decided to try again, this time upping the difficulty and using a healing type, Lily Laloru. A note with information appeared next to the green vine's profile. When Lin Yuan infused it with spiritual qi, the creature began to glow and evolve. Seeing this, Lin Yuan's eyes lit up with delight. She had become an elite and acquired a skill, increasing her value at least tenfold. He cheerfully called his pets. He ordered Smarty and Yin Yin to stop sleeping and come over to him to watch. Yin Yin flew over and told Lin Yuan that she thought they'd leveled up. Smarty jumped onto Lin Yuan's shoulder, rubbing against him proudly. They both truly improved their skills. Smarty puffed out his chest with pride at his abilities. He had become 30 times smarter. He then scanned Yin Yin. Yin Yin chirped that her singing had improved significantly and sang a note. Seeing how they had both evolved, Lin Yuan couldn't help but smile broadly. He'd also acquired a cheat for unlimited money. He anticipated their incredible wealth. Yin Yin tilted her head and asked what a cheat was. Lin Yuan froze for a second, then thought that this was much more than just wealth. He knew that the evolution of spiritual beings is incredibly complex. Most beings need a creator who uses precious materials and spiritual medicines only for the ghostly chance to start evolution. But he could do it alone, without anyone's help. He realized it was an incredible ability, one that people would kill for. He understood that if he wasn't careful, he would become a huge target for everyone else. He couldn't yet protect himself from serious threats. This secret must never be revealed, or it will be the end for him. To safely harness this power, he must slowly become the creator. Just then, Smarty called out to him, getting his attention. He shouted that Lin Yuan's phone was ringing, and it was Little Chi calling. Yin Ying brought him the phone. At that moment, the main character thought and remembered that it was time for Chi's first contract with a spiritual being. He answered the call, and her cheerful voice immediately rang out, calling him brother. She said she hadn't called for 2 days and asked how he was feeling. He replied that he felt much better. He added that he had even planned to clean up the backyard today. Xiaozi screamed into the phone, indignantly asking what he was saying. She reminded him that he had no spiritual qi to support him and asked what he was even thinking about. She strictly forbade him from touching the backyard until she returned home. He chuckled softly at her concern. He assured her he was just doing a little cleaning, as her older brother wasn't that weak. He reminded her of their promise and asked her to focus on her studies at school and not waste her talent. She gently replied that she knew this. After hanging up, she whispered a promise to her brother not to let him down. Then class began at her academy. The teacher addressed the students with an important speech. Soon, they would all form their first contracts with spiritual beings. Although the grade and quality of a spiritual being are crucial, one's own professional level also influences combat effectiveness. Each combat profession has its own compatibility range. If you choose a spiritual being who doesn't match your affinity, the contract will be very difficult and may even damage your mental strength. Even for peaceful-type professionals, such as artisans or observers, a deep understanding of spiritual beings is needed to properly fuse spiritual materials. And since their class focuses on producing combat-type professionals, they must carefully consider the synergies between their creatures. After the end of the lesson, the students began to disperse, but the teacher stopped Xiaozi, asking her to stay. She frowned slightly, expressing concern. The teacher asked if she was truly certain of the spiritual being she wanted to contract with. She added that she knew about her family's situation, but her talent was exceptional. She reminded him that the selection of the Federation's 100 sons would soon take place, and she couldn't miss this opportunity. Xiaozi hesitated, trying to answer her teacher. Before she could finish her sentence, the scene returned to Lin Yuan's shop. Lin Yuan was hard at work refining spiritual beings. After several hours, he finally cried out in joy. He exclaimed that he'd finally done it, completed the task, and upgraded 300 lilies to elite grade. 20,000 coins in his pocket. This should be enough to buy a high-grade spiritual being for Xiaozi's contract. Just then, his phone rang. He frowned at the unknown number. He thought it might be a new client and decided the timing was perfect. He was just about to finish work for the day when the guy answered the phone, asking who it was. A female voice came from the phone. She shouted and asked if he was Xiaozi's guardian, and if he knew that she was planning to make a contract with the Gray Beetle. She indignantly asked how she could waste her incredible talent so senselessly. Lin Yuan's expression changed at these words. He thought of the Gray Beetle, a normal-level creature that could be purchased for 200 coins. No one would make contracts with them. They were only good for food. The woman continued her speech abruptly. She said that Xiaozi's affinity encompassed all protective-type spiritual beings. She was more capable than anyone else in the city. She stated that her guardian must prepare an elite-grade defensive-type spiritual being for her first contract. Lin Yuan quickly replied and thanked the teacher and promised that a suitable creature would be sent to the school within 2 days. Hanging up, he muttered his thoughts. He repeated the words, elite level, and realized he'd need at least 100,000 Federation coins. Time was short, and he needed to hurry. The scene then moves to the next day. We see Lin Yuan, looking completely exhausted. After channeling spiritual qi all night long, He feels completely drained, but he managed to finish the job just in time. He notices that the market for spirit beings is a strange place. He decides it's best to hide the ring, just to be on the safe side. Smarty is sitting on his head, and Lin Yuan addresses him. He asks Smarty if he really wants to come with him. Smarty proudly answers the owner's question. He declares that of course he wants to. He also reminds him that bargaining is the job of the beast of 100 questions. Lin Yuan sighs as he looks at his pet. He thinks that ever since it evolved, it has become so stubborn and disobedient. Just then, a horse-drawn carriage pulls up. The driver shouts, announcing the arrival of the vehicle. He asks all passengers to wait behind the yellow line. Seeing the carriage, Smarty tilts his head in confusion. He notices that it looks a little different from the buses he knows. Lin Yuan chuckled at the cat's remark. After all, Smarty had read history textbooks, not modern transportation guides. He reminds us that a century after the revival of spiritual qi, spiritual beings began replacing many of the old steel machines. He climbs into the carriage, preparing for the journey. The coachman warns the passengers. He advises them to hold on tight. Then he lashes the reins, starting the carriage. And the carriage rushes forward so fast that Smarty almost falls. Lin Yuan catches him just in time, saving him from falling. The coachman laughs, looking at them. He asks if the little brother is also heading to the spirit market, and remarks that he's picked an excellent day for it. Lin Yuan counters with a question. He asks why this is so, and inquires whether a new batch of spiritual beings has arrived. The coachman answers a passenger's question. He asks if he's seen the news about a spatial rift opening a few days ago, approximately 30 miles from Xiak County. According to him, it took Violet Thorn's guardians 2 whole days and 2 nights to track down all the aberrant insects. They had to work hard to stabilize the area. He adds that there are rumors that a detachment of guards is still nearby. Lin Yuan is stunned by this information. The coachman continues his story. He says the rift opened right next to a spiritual creature breeding base. Most of the creatures there were killed or wounded during the incident. The surviving staff now sell the wounded creatures at the market. Hearing these words, Smarty suddenly remembered something important and hastened to share his thoughts. He realized that this was precisely how that slow-witted pig had managed to escape to freedom. The cart driver couldn't help but chuckle heartily. He added that an incredible number of them had escaped. He'd bought one yesterday, and his family had devoured it with gusto, and they carefully hung up all the remaining pieces to dry for future use. Lin Yuan gave a thumbs-up sign of approval, expressing his admiration. A short time later, their small group finally arrived at a bustling market. Here, he thought, he might be able to buy some interesting creature for less. The smart guy asked what kind of spirit they were planning to purchase, and what their budget was, to which Lin Yuan gave a comprehensive answer. Elite rank, defense. As for the price, he estimated it would be at least 100,000 Federation coins. Smarty's ears twitched nervously at the amount. They only had 20. That was why he planned to exchange the green vines and Lily Laura, which he had managed to upgrade last night. The little animal calculated that even selling 24 plants would not cover their needs, and they would still not have enough money. Walking along the rows, Lin Yuan looked at the counters and mentally wondered if these plants were calling to him, because he clearly felt which spirits he was drawn to and which ones he was not. He noticed a pattern. The brighter their glow, the friendlier their aura seemed. Could his range of affinity really be so broad? His compatibility with healers and support was high, and plant spirits seemed downright kin to him, and Chi's affinity was with protection. However, at that moment, Smart Guy was already engaged in a heated and passionate haggling with the shop owner. He dropped the price from 80,000 to 60,000. Meanwhile, Lin Yuan carefully scanned the creature presented to him. It was a rabbit with tough skin. The creature's rank was elite, its type classified as strictly defensive. After reviewing the specifications, Lin Yuan hastily grabbed Smarty in his arms. He began to apologize fervently and awkwardly to the merchant. The animal was indignant, not understanding the owner's actions, and boasted that with due persistence, he would have definitely taken the goods for 20,000. Lin Yuan whispered to the pet if he had ever heard of the rule of checking other shops first, and then they continued on their way. Soon, the next spiritual being came into view. Lin Yuan shook his head doubtfully, dismissing this possibility. It would take a long time to pump, and this turtle was slow. Their search soon yielded another candidate, a clawed fox. Lin Yuan let out a heavy, disappointed sigh, no different from a rabbit, and somehow cowardly. The little animal suggested returning to the rabbit, but Lin Yuan shook his head. He was determined that they must continue their search. The young man understood that this choice needed to be approached with the utmost prudence and thought through carefully. After some time, his wandering gaze caught a rather unusual sheep. The creature was impressive, already at level 6, an elite rank. Perfect quality. The young man was delighted to think that this was a specimen of perfect quality, and even had the skill of controlling a spiritual beast. Lin Yuan's eyes instantly lit up with genuine interest. He turned decisively to the owner of the stall. The young man offered the man 100,000 for his sheep, to which the dumbfounded seller asked to wait until he consulted with his wife. The smart guy leaned over to the owner and said that he had seen one like this for 50,000. Lin Yuan replied that this was exactly how a buyer's true sincerity was demonstrated. After finishing the conversation, the man announced that the price would be exactly 120,000, and he wouldn't budge a penny. Lin Yuan's face instantly darkened at such impudence. The young man said with annoyance that it seemed there were no more worthy protective spirits in the area. The pet was glad they hadn't bought the sheep, but admitted that for Chu Shi, it would have been worth the extra money. Just then, a merchant's cry rang out, announcing that all the spirit beast meat had been sold out. The man offered his sincere apologies. People were outraged by the quick sale, and someone pointed out to the owner the seriously injured animals still inside the pen. The buyers demanded that they be slaughtered. And at these words, Lin Yuan's eyes suddenly lit up. The phrase about wounded spirit beasts was clearly imprinted in his mind. The clever man had a premonition of trouble. Meanwhile, attention shifted to the tired merchant inside the shop. He confessed to those gathered that he felt genuine pity for these poor, crippled creatures. He invited anyone interested to come inside and take a look at the remains of his living merchandise. The crowd of onlookers merely chuckled and began to disperse. It was at that moment that Lin Yuan confidently stepped forward. The merchant looked up at him wearily, his gaze downcast. He regretfully informed the boy that the meat was gone and the shop was closing. Lin Yuan said he had come to inspect the spiritual beings inside. He noted to himself that the owner's emotional state seemed quite unstable. Concentrating, he smoothly activated his unique skill of calm mind. Under the influence of this skill, the merchant visibly relaxed. The man offered to call him simply Brother Yan in a friendly manner. All three animals remained. The man led Lin Yuan. The place stank. Yang pointed to two spiders spewing webs, introducing them to his guest. But their abdomens were horribly torn. The poor guys had only a couple of days left to live. Lin Yuan activated the scan, and his level was a mere 10. But he had skills. If not for the rift, this creature would have evolved to bronze very soon. The young man suggested that if the spider were healthy, it could easily be sold on the market for 300,000 coins. Yan explained that support creatures that combined control and poison had always been worth their weight in gold. But now he'd be happy to sell both for at least 150,000 coins. Lin Yuan responded to these pessimistic words. He decided to buy both spiders, but he admitted that he didn't currently have the necessary amount of cash. He offered Jan a trade for another creature, and the man openly told the boy that after selling this batch, he planned to open a new base. Perhaps his offer would not be useful to him. Meanwhile, Lin Yuan continued to press his point. The young man asked what Yang would say if these were elite-ranked green vines, causing the merchant to freeze in place. The stunned man asked about their quality, to which the young man, with unwavering firmness, stated that he was absolutely confident in the impeccable quality of his goods. Yan's eyes widened in shock, and he remembered with amazement that the elite-ranked green vines were truly a priceless treasure. The merchant quietly announced that his very last spirit being was there. He added with pain that they had poured their hearts into trying to save him, but fate had decreed otherwise. Lin Yuan wasted no time scanning the mysterious beast. A stone rhinoceros, Elite 10. The quality was epic. Lin Yuan's eyes lit up with an even brighter, wilder flame of delight. Just one step away from the bronze rank, the young man instantly realized there was simply no better option for Chu Zi. He immediately asked Brother Yang the price of this stone rhinoceros, which caused the merchant genuine surprise. A confident, calm smile played on Lin Yuan's lips. He immediately offered 200,000 coins for him, leaving Yan literally petrified with astonishment. The stunned merchant began to question whether the boy really had a way to heal this rhinoceros, or whether there was a powerful healer standing behind him. Yan asked the main character if he really planned to take all three creatures, giving them elite-ranked green vines in exchange. The smart guy firmly asked Yan to trust him completely. The main character assured the merchant that the green vines would not disappoint him under any circumstances. Seeing the young man's unwavering confidence, Yan exhaled and said he was prepared to believe the young man's words. He added that since the buyer was taking everyone, he could close up shop right now. The man then pulled out a box from his supplies and announced his intention to pack the stone rhinoceros and the web-spitting spiders directly into it. Having seen such a strange thing, Smarty couldn't contain his burning curiosity. Yan explained that it was a spirit-locking box, an invention of the renowned Ostrich Logistics Company. This technology allowed for the safe storage of spirit beings within a small space. The smart guy was amazed at the existence of such a useful thing, and asked why they never used it. But the main character said that they didn't have money for such a thing. After this, Jan placed the wounded stone rhinoceros inside the miracle box with the utmost care. Watching how such a gigantic creature fit perfectly inside, Smarty felt a real shock. Yan explained that this spirit-locking box was of the copper rank. He said that the bull would likely never reach the bronze level. After uttering these sorrowful words, Yan summoned his own spirit beast, a flame lizard with a tumor crown. Bronze level 7. Stroking his fearsome pet tenderly, Ian broke into an incredibly proud smile. Lin Yuan was absolutely delighted. After scanning the beast, the young man confirmed out loud that it was indeed a true bronze-ranked beast. Meanwhile, Yan was also secretly amazed by his young companion's knowledge. He had already mastered the researcher's skills. Either he was a genius, or he was being trained. It seemed his gamble had paid off. It was at this moment that loud, angry voices from neighboring merchants suddenly began to be heard nearby. The merchants were angry because his lizard had scared all their animals. Yan apologized and said that they were already leaving. After that, they climbed onto the back of the enormous creature. The shopkeeper commanded that it was time to set off and ordered them to hold on tight. The next moment, the fire lizard took off and rushed forward at a simply unimaginable speed. Lin Yuan struggled to stay in the saddle, mentally marveling at how much faster this ride was than the jolting of a donkey cart. Very soon, this crazy journey ended right at the doors of Lin Yuan's spiritual being shop. The protagonist slid down to the hard ground with difficulty, still struggling with severe dizziness after such an extreme jump. Jan let out a quiet, knowing laugh. Many people felt ill after a trip like that. Stepping over the threshold, Jan cast a keen glance around the room and noted to himself that this place did not at all resemble the creator's secret refuge. The merchant mentally decided that if the boy's green vines did not meet the stated standards, then business and friendship would have to be separated. However, the very second his gaze fell upon the plants on display, he was now absolutely 100% sure that behind this boy stood a true master creator. Unable to contain his emotions, he exclaimed out loud that what he saw exceeded all his expectations. It was first-class quality. Lin Yuan explained with complete calm that before the vines evolved, he had generously infused their soil with additional energy. Enchanted, Yang carefully plucked a small leaf from one of the sprouts. Watching the thick, rich juice ooze from the cut, he was amazed at the powerful concentration of life force contained in just one leaf. Suddenly, a memory came to his mind. Someone's arrogant voice reproached him for not even bothering to prepare heavenly and earthly treasures, and Yan thought bitterly that to receive such help, he needed to provide the preferred spiritual materials. He needed to befriend the main character. Just at that moment, Lin Yuan asked if Brother Yang was happy with the green ones. They moved on to price. Yan said such specimens would easily sell for 30,000 coins. The merchant offered his own price of 33,000 per pot and declared his willingness to buy 100 of them at once. The little animal, in a panic, tried to calculate how much money selling hundreds of pots at 33,000 would bring in, but Lin Yuan maintained an absolute, icy calm. With a slight, welcoming smile, the young man replied that the deal was accepted. He rejoiced inwardly, considering this arrangement simply ideal. He just needed a large party to advance in his inexpensive spiritual profession. Meanwhile, Jan was amazed by the fact that the deal was truly enormous, yet the boy remained completely unperturbed, experienced. The man was finally convinced that the simple clothes and tiny shop were just a clever cover organized by the patron behind him. Yang politely asked how long it would take to prepare the goods, and Lin Yuan just as calmly replied that he would need exactly 7 days. The young man quickly calculated in his mind, an hour for each pot, plus a couple of days to deliver Xiao Ci's spiritual beings, and a little time to rest. Upon hearing this answer, Yan couldn't hold back the tears that immediately welled up in his eyes. He praised the heavens, considering what was happening a true miracle. Having overcome his surprise, the young man confirmed that Brother Yang could come for his order in exactly 1 week. Yang grabbed his phone and asked if Gigi wanted to take a deposit for the remaining pots. But Lin Yuan firmly shook his head, rejecting the offer. When all the formalities were settled, Yang said goodbye, promising to return in 7 days. Seeing him off with his eyes, Lin Yuan realized that now the most difficult part of the work began. The action then moved to Lin Yuan's backyard, where he carefully carried the wounded stone rhinoceros. The animals were not very happy with their new neighbor, but Lin Yuan gently reassured his household, suggesting that they first focus on saving lives. After waiting for them to move to a safe distance, the young man began to generously pour his spiritual power into the animal's wounded body. Soon, thanks to his efforts, the creature's terrible wounds began to slowly but surely heal. Noticing this positive progress, Lin Yuan smiled happily. The young man enthusiastically decided to try to speed up the regeneration process a little. He poured in even more energy, but at that very moment, the rhinoceros began to let out heart-rending groans of pain. Lin Yuan was seriously frightened. The guy was panicking and wondering what was going on, and assuming that it could be a barrier to the copper rank, with unwavering determination, he shouted to the beast to hold on, to break through this wall together. With these words, he released an even more powerful stream of his spiritual energy. Smarty and Yan didn't actually get very far. Eventually, a deafening roar erupted from the creature's mouth, and its body glowed brightly with the powerful energy that erupted. Lin Yuan let out a sigh of relief, celebrating the success of his plan, and at that moment, a system window materialized in front of him. The system updated the name of the spirit creature, Ironhorn Runox. Its rank has triumphantly risen to bronze, remaining at level 1. The system then offered a choice of 3 traits: scaly skin, a gait that maintained endurance while running, or pain absorption. The young man reflected on the difficult choice he faced between these 3 unique abilities. 2 were good. He judged that the skill of tireless step would be completely useless baggage for a spiritual being who specialized in defense. As for the scaly hide, it would certainly increase base defense and add a little extra damage during ramming attacks. But still, nothing special. But pain absorption was a completely different story, as it allowed the beast to absorb enemy damage and heal its own wounds. The boy realized that with this skill, the spirit would eventually become a resilient and indestructible tank. The young man decided what to take. Looking at the updated characteristics, Lin Yuan estimated that with the right combination of these skills, the beast would turn into an attacking spirit in defensive armor. Gigi smiled as he thought about how this would be a flawless first spirit for Xiao Ci. No one would approach her. The smart guy wondered if this meant that Xiao Ci and the iron-horned Runox would become a classic Beauty and the Beast duo, to which Lin Yuan noted that the girl's safety was above any aesthetic considerations. Approaching Smarty, he grinned maliciously and reminded his pet that he himself was, in fact, a monster. The main character's guesses were confirmed. Along with the increase in the rank of the iron-horned Runox, his own spiritual power also increased proportionally. The young man had deduced a clear pattern. The higher the rank an evolving spirit achieved, the more powerful the spiritual return it received in return. Now he had expended almost all of his energy, and I wondered how far a creator of the highest level could go using the heavenly treasures, when the smart guy, all drooling, asked how the beast was delivered to Xiao Tzu, to which Lin Yuan, taking out his phone, replied that he would use ostrich logistics. He had a little money and was in a hurry, so there would be a direct flight. As soon as he heard the magic word flight, Smarty instantly transformed, and his eyes lit up with joy. Could he fly like Yin Yin? And then a quiet, impenetrable night fell upon the city. The action moved unnoticed to the palace of the shining moon. Somewhere there, a voice methodically listed the necessary ingredients. The ingredients arrived, and City Lord Lin was there, accompanied by a high-ranking officer. The officer timidly attempted to intervene, but he was cut off. The alchemist sternly ordered his subordinate not to dare open his mouth without permission. Then all the collected ingredients were thoroughly mixed, and to complete this alchemical sacrament, animal blood was poured into the brew. At the same moment, clouds of thick smoke burst out of the cauldron, quickly filling the entire space of the huge hall. Feeling the pressure simply unbearable, the lord and the officer hastened to close themselves with protective barriers, mentally amazed at the fact that the process of creation alone released such colossal power. The Lord realized with a shudder that this power had penetrated even her protective spiritual aura, confirming the presence of a true 5-star creator. And then, out of the haze, the master creator herself emerged in the flesh. She commanded them to summon the spirit they wished to develop. This is how I met the Moon Empress, one of the 3 legendary 5-star creators of the entire Radiant Federation. The male subordinate, Sikun, possessed a king-level of strength, and beside him was the All-City Lord, Ling Xiao, who also possessed that level of strength, and was pleased that everything seemed to have gone smoothly. Sikun trembled and summoned his spirit beast, and bowed deeply and respectfully to the Empress. The very next second, the Moon Empress, with a deft movement, poured the entire prepared mixture directly into the creature's open mouth. As soon as the potion entered, the spirit collapsed onto the stone floor, convulsing violently. Sikun was overcome with genuine panic, but the Empress merely said that everything was going according to plan. The beast was evolving to the coveted legendary rank right now. All she needed to do was fuse her will rune with it, and it would evolve into a fantastical species. Hearing these words, Sykuna thanked the Empress and said that he would be ready to serve her until his death. Meanwhile, the tiger-like spirit began its majestic evolution, emitting a thunderous roar amidst the raging flames of energy. A tiny rabbit sat modestly next to the Empress, whose forehead was adorned with a graceful, crescent-shaped mark. This harmless-looking rabbit cast a single glance at the giant tiger, and he instantly shook with primal terror. The Moon Empress spoke in a soft, enveloping voice. She told Sikun that he wouldn't have to serve until death, but she did touch on the topic of the creator qualification exams, which were only held once every 3 years, and a participant could only advance their level by 1 level. She wondered how, under such a system, it was even possible to identify truly talented specialists. The man asked the lady if she was proposing to allow participants to take exams for several levels in a row this year, to which the Empress, stroking the rabbit, clarified that only those who immediately pass to the first level will be able to immediately try to move on to the second level. The Empress ordered Saikun to set out immediately and convey this order to the responsible persons. As soon as he left, Ling Xiaowu dared to ask her question. Was this decision connected with the fact that the exams had not produced any outstanding talents for many years? But the Empress replied that this was not the case, and that the matter was purely personal. After all, almost all of her colleagues had already taken on apprentices, and she couldn't keep up with these old men. Hearing the confession, Ling Xiaowu was amazed by the fact that the Moon Empress herself intended to take on a disciple. But then the Empress warned of an approaching spatial tide. The entire city is riddled with insect-infested rifts. The woman emphasized to the Lord the need to maintain utmost vigilance in fulfilling his duty to protect his native lands and their inhabitants. Every rift must have a guard, and the Lord confirmed her readiness to serve as a support. And then the narrative smoothly returned to Lin Yuan. The young man appeared before us, riding a flying spiritual being. The owner of the plane looked around with concern and asked the boy how he was feeling, and said that it would be better above the clouds. The main character was incredibly nauseous, but he said that everything was okay. The cab driver remarked that the protagonist's little animal, the 100 Questions, turned out to be an unusually lively fellow. It was a pity he didn't have the time. He would have given the smart guy a ride too. At these words, Lin Yuan instantly remembered his Smarty, whom he'd left behind. A parting scene ensued, with Smarty screaming hysterically, begging him to come with him. Emerging from these warm memories, Lin Yuan smiled faintly and told the driver that everything was perfectly fine. He'd take the ride next time. The man immediately joyfully informed the boy that they had finally arrived at their destination. The main thing here is not to be afraid of heights. Before them lay the famous and truly magnificent view of the outskirts of Purple Thorn City. The moon shone especially brightly that night. Lin Yuan looked down and was struck by the breathtaking sight. Many never see such a thing, even in their entire lives. But it was at this mesmerizing moment, while enjoying the beauty, that he suddenly felt something extremely strange and inexplicable within himself. It was the rune of will. He mentally acknowledged the fact that this rune of will was a true embodiment of majestic mountains and endless rivers. What creatures was it associated with? While the young man was a Dulma, the driver, worried about his sudden calm, asked about his well-being, and the main character answered that everything was fine and asked how much longer it was to the city of Red Bar. The driver explained that they would arrive sometime in the morning, definitely not before sunset, since the main character was feeling sick and had to slow down. Instantly gathering his will into a fist, only straightened his back, and with unwavering determination, asked the driver not to worry about his condition anymore and to speed up. At that very moment, the scene moved to the academy where Zhao Si studied. It was already morning. A huge crowd of students headed toward the training grounds. Everyone was shocked. Today they were supposed to acquire spiritual beings, but it turned out the schedule had changed. Most likely, there will be practice immediately after this, and this did not make those around us very happy, and it was also probably connected with a change in the rules for selecting the Federation's top 100 players. Some guy confirmed these suspicions, mentioning that his friend from a completely different academy also knew this. At that very moment, the instructor came out to them and said that today there would be a practice fight for first-year students against third-year students. After they received the spirits, they would hold a mini-tournament. At this time, Zhao Zi's friend said that she was very nervous about the upcoming battles and asked if the girl had changed her mind about taking the armored beetle. Zhao Zi chose to remain silent, only thoughtfully and tenderly lowering her gaze downwards. Looking at the tiny insect resting in her palm, she decided she would take it after all. Meanwhile, in the adjacent combat arena, another training duel was already approaching its logical conclusion. A voice announced the end of the 8th match. The first year's squirrel had fled the battlefield, and victory was secured for the third year. Upon hearing the results, one of them started shouting that it was unfair. Their experience in battle was too different, and she turned to Zhao Si. She was the best in their class, and she had a chance to win. The teacher officially announced the beginning of the next, 9th training duel. Zhao Zi's opponent, a senior student who was confident in himself, responded confidently to the traditional question about the participants' readiness. All the students immediately recognized Feng Lixing, whose family had influential connections within the Creators Guild itself. He was sure to be among the Federation's top 100 players. Rumors say Zhao Si will be there too, but something is off about her spirit. Feng Lixing himself stood in the arena, thinking that his recent meeting with people from the Masters community had increased his chances of entering the top 100 players, and even the chance to become the Moon Empress's disciple. He looked ahead and realized that it seemed like Zhao Si had truly chosen the beetle as her spirit. She had no chance, since her poor family was ruining her talent. Despite the oppressive atmosphere, Zhao Si continued to gaze tenderly and unwaveringly at the tiny insect clutched in her palm. She would not give up. Taking a deep breath, the girl loudly and clearly declared her complete readiness for the upcoming battle. However, a cry calling her name rang out from behind her. Turning around, she discovered the teacher, who was dragging a spiritual being in the form of a yellow-spotted dog along with her with noticeable effort. Coming closer, the trainer announced that this elite quality dog was the best she had managed to obtain in such a short time. She wouldn't let her talent be wasted. Before Xiaozi could respond, someone from above shouted at them to stop. Everyone's eyes turned to the sky, where they saw a huge bird and a man leaping from it. Finally, Lin Yuan landed on the arena and thanked the teacher for her concern. His sister was in shock. Without wasting a second, Lin Yuan walked up to her and handed over the box, asking her to trust him and take it. The teacher, watching this scene, hesitantly said that if all else failed, they still had the yellow-spotted dog. Hearing this ridiculously absurd dialogue, Feng Lixing couldn't help but burst into loud, mocking laughter. Having laughed his fill, he declared that it did not matter which spirit they took. He stated that a worthless dung beetle or a flea-ridden dog would not be able to stand up to his royal power beetle, which he had raised since childhood. He immediately summoned it, and the protagonist analyzed it. A royal power beetle, bronze level, first rank. The quality was first class, and the skills were strong too. Having read the characteristics, the mentor realized the full extent of the threat looming over her student. After all, no spirit they possessed could stand against him. However, Lin Yuan continued to maintain his utterly unflappable icy calm. He had an ace up his sleeve. At the same time, Xiaozi clutched the bronze container for creatures and wondered where her family got the money for such a thing. Did Lin sell the store? Noticing his sister's doubts, Lin Yuan stroked her head reassuringly and told her it was all right. She needed to focus on the upcoming battle. Finally, Qi smiled. She said that she could handle it and pressed the button to release the creature from the box with force. She made a solemn promise to make every effort to ensure that her brother's efforts were not in vain. A blinding, powerful beam of light erupted from the opening device, from which a massive spiritual being emerged. The contract was sealed. The surrounding crowd of spectators was in shock. Confused questions about the nature of this previously unseen beast poured in from all sides. Someone present remarked that this giant's skin resembled cast, impenetrable steel. This was a massive, iron-horned bull rhinoceros. Such an epic appearance surprised even Feng Lixing, who, however, quickly came to his senses and tried to hide his fear behind a contemptuous grin about the useless waste of money the poor family had spent on this bull. In response to this torrent of verbal bile, Xiaozi gave her beast the first battle command, and it rushed forward. The teacher was shocked. The bull's horn alone was worth 700,000, and the main character was not thrilled that they immediately began to value it in parts and at market value. Meanwhile, in the arena itself, the two cyclopean creatures finally met in a monstrous, thunderous head-on collision. Enraged by such stubborn resistance, Feng Lixing said that her bull's destiny was to defend, and he would not be able to attack. He promised to immediately demonstrate to everyone present the true destructive power of the attacking beast. With these words, he immediately gave his charge the appropriate command to act. A giant battering ram. And she pushed our bull away. The girl desperately begged her armored protector to hold on tighter. The faithful pet obediently planted all its limbs on the ground. Observing this stalemate, Feng Lixing realized that the girl was truly talented. They had only just signed a contract, and she was already supporting their spirit with her energy. At the same time, the teacher exhaled, because they did not fly out, and realized that Xiaozi was hasty with the frontal attack. She lacked combat experience. However, Lin Yuan, who was standing nearby, realized that this attack was a tactical test of her opponent. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, Feng Lixing's beetle changed tactics and began rapidly circling the lumbering ox. The students around him were confused, while Feng Lixing himself continued to smirk inwardly at their naivety, his beetle scurrying about, waiting for the perfect moment and place to strike. And at that very moment, his armored pet finally figured out that perfect angle for attack. Sensing the imminent denouement, Feng Lixing issued a bold challenge to his opponent, saying that she did not understand who she was facing. Obeying the will of its master, the giant insect launched into its most destructive, all-destroying attack yet. And the next moment, the entire arena disappeared into smoke. Xiaozi called her pet. The iron-horned rhinoceros bull, who stood firm, caught everyone's attention. The students recognized him as a representative of the power assault type, known for his ability to kill with one blow. The experienced teacher visibly tensed and concentrated. Sighing heavily, she realized that even the legendary ox rhinoceros hide and Xiao Si's efforts couldn't save the situation. Even if the beast survives now, it will fall under future attacks. The teacher is outraged by the unfairness of the duel between a first-year student and a third-year student, and doesn't understand the administration's logic. However, Lin Yuan maintained an icy calm, completely in control of the situation. He was confident that the skill he had chosen would allow him to handle this critical situation brilliantly. At that moment, Xiao Si gave her ox rhino a new, decisive command. She ordered the beast to immediately use its special combat skill. The next moment, the giant bull rhinoceros successfully activated its exclusive ability called pain absorption. The shocked students were stunned, unable to comprehend the iron-horned rhinoceros bull's sudden healing. The crowd wondered if the beast's rapid healing and sudden aura change were part of its skill. The teacher happily recognized the siphon of pain ability, calling it a unique and rare phenomenon. She explained that this skill allows one to absorb damage and transform it into pure life force. Lin Yuan watched his sister with pride, silently praising her skill. He noted that Xiao Si, despite her lack of combat experience and her first experience controlling such a beast, masterfully took control of the situation. Feng Lixing, shocked, furiously shouted that Iron Skin didn't give his opponent an advantage. He dismissively dismissed the other beast as nothing more than a tougher punching bag. The enraged Feng Lixing ordered the royal power beetle to immediately continue its attack, and the insect immediately resumed its furious advance. The students whispered anxiously, amazed by the king beetle's unquenchable power. However, everyone was perplexed by the behavior of the bull rhino, who continued to stand still, meekly absorbing all the damage. The worried teacher asked Lin Yuan about the lack of counterattacks, and clarified whether he really was Xiao Si's brother. The young man reassured her, reminding her of his sister's talent for defense and expressing complete confidence in her plan. Attention returned to the arena, where an enraged Feng Lixing demanded an immediate end to the fight. He commanded the king beetle to unleash its full power into a devastating skill, Jointed Horn Ram. The beetle obediently concentrated all its monstrous strength and rushed towards the bull at great speed. Xiao Si was prepared for this turn of events and commanded the iron-horned rhinoceros ox to repel the final attack. At her command, the pet immediately activated its stone horn skill. The astonished student wondered if the rules allowed for using the arena structure in combat. Lin Yuan merely smiled proudly, appreciating his sister's ingenious tactical maneuver and her ability to adapt to the terrain. Feng Lixing gnashed his teeth in rage, accusing his opponent of using cheap tricks. Finally losing his composure, he ordered his royal power beetle to simply crush her. The huge insect rushed forward again, fulfilling the will of its angry master. Xiao Si confidently encouraged her pet and ordered it to reactivate stone horns. The armored beast instantly activated the skill, preparing for the confrontation. In the very next moment, the beetle and the bull collided in a head-on collision of truly colossal destructive force. One of the students shouted in shock that this giant iron bull had actually managed to withstand such a monstrous blow. The spiritual beings locked in a battle of equal strength, attempting to outshine each other in physical prowess. The students and teacher were deeply confused. By their logic, the royal power beetle should have had an undeniable advantage. The teacher explained that the jointed horn ram was a self-destructive attack that ignored the user's injuries. However, when it collided with the bull rhino's defense, some of the damage ricocheted back to the insect itself. The teacher noted that the beetle had developed only offensively, which is why Feng Lixing hadn't expected to encounter an equally strong defense. The students finally realized the fatal flaw in his tactics. Lin Yuan analyzed Feng's tactics, realizing that relying on attack was only effective for a quick suppression. He realized that if victory wasn't achieved immediately, the situation would turn against the attacker. A student joyfully shouted that the royal beetle was starting to lose ground. The spectators enthusiastically decided that luck was clearly on the side of first-year student Xiao Si today. The teacher snapped, "It's not luck, it's physics. A massive bull rhinoceros is inherently more resilient than a beetle in a protracted fight. She added that the owner's condition directly affects the beast and advised the students to finally check their textbooks. Feng Lixing watched his beetle lose its balance. Burning with rage and humiliation, he couldn't help it. Grimacing with anger, the young man cynically remarked that this was normal in a real fight, and advised Xiaosi not to blame him for what was about to happen. The enraged youth ordered his royal power beetle to distance itself and then strike directly at the girl herself. As soon as this vile command was given, the insect suddenly jumped away from the bull and rushed straight at the defenseless Xiaozi. The teacher screamed in horror that such actions were a violation of every conceivable rule. The protagonist mentally cursed what was happening, desperately praying for Xiaozi to dodge this deadly attack. Before Feng Lixing could react, Xiaozi icily ordered the ox rhinoceros to slam its stone horns straight into the ground. The beast complied with alarming speed. The rhinoceros's horns sank into the ground with monstrous force, raising boulders. The beetle, rushing at full speed, crashed into the obstacle with a roar. The blow was so devastating that sparks literally flew from the insect's eyes, after which it collapsed limply to the ground, completely unconscious. The beetle was defeated. Feng Lixing was in shock. The judge declared Xiaozi the winner. The freshmen erupted in jubilation. This was their first triumph in an unequal fight. The winner was showered with well-deserved praise. Even the stern teacher broke into a smile, admiring Xiaozi's tactics and Lin Yuan's contribution. The young man merely sheepishly asked the teacher to loosen her grip. Her joy had caused her to squeeze his shoulder too tightly. At that moment, a happy Xiaozi joyfully ran up to them and hugged her older brother tightly. Playfully slapping Lin Yuan, Xiaozi anxiously asked where the money came from. She feared that her brother had sold their store and was left without funds for medical treatment, accusing him of recklessness. Lin Yuan gently reassured his sister that he was healthy and the store was thriving. But Xiaozi looked at him with obvious suspicion and asked if that was true. The teacher interrupted them, apologizing for the rush. She solemnly announced that Xiaozi, owing to his outstanding talent, had been recommended for selection. Lin Yuan nodded understandingly, confirming that they had already discussed this possibility. The teacher explained that the Purple Thorn selection was only a regional stage. The real goal was to reach the national elite at the Shining Federation tournament. She assured Xiaozi that her talent was sufficient for a start, and promised that the academy would invest all its resources in her development. Her prediction was bold. The girl's skills would grow at an incredible rate. Lin Yuan thanked the teacher, promising to personally provide his sister with everything she needed. Xiaozi bowed respectfully in response. The teacher smiled warmly, calling the cultivation of talent her duty, and offered to give her brother a tour of the academy. Lin Yuan asked about the fate of the abandoned yellow-spotted dog. The teacher laughed good-naturedly and assured him that she would personally take care of the pet. The scene changed, and a quiet night descended. As they strolled, Lin Yuan reproachfully reminded his sister that he had already told her about his ability to sense energy. Xiaozi stubbornly declared that she would only believe it when she saw it for herself. She also noted that purchasing the ox rhinoceros must have cost him an astronomical amount of money. Lin Yuan showed his sister the bank account. Shocked by the number of zeros, Xiaozi couldn't believe her eyes. Her brother explained that with his renewed strength, he had discovered a rare gift from the Creator, and this money was his honest reward for his first orders. So he told his sister to forget about her part-time jobs and focus on her studies to win the selection. He added that he was preparing for the Creator's certificate exam. Xiaozi's face lit up with delight. Her brother's news seemed like a true miracle to her. Lin Yuan smiled happily and suggested celebrating their success with a sumptuous dinner. Xiaozi, clapping her hands in delight, chose a traditional Chinese samovar. Her brother laughingly promised to order whatever she wanted. In the final scene, the teacher, tenderly hugging the yellow-spotted dog, offered it some meat buns. The dog responded by happily wagging its tail and barking twice. The scene changed. After a rich meeting with his sister, Lin Yuan once again mounted the spiritual bird and headed straight for his home. Lin Yuan thought about his sister the entire way home. Rejoicing at her success, he resolved to work even harder. After all, Rigorous exams lay ahead, ones he couldn't take lightly. Lin Yuan decided to urgently buy textbooks for the researcher and analyst specialties. He figured the stack would be impressive, but Smart Guy would help him complete the task in no time. Lin Yuan recalled Xiaozi's fight. Although the damage reflection mechanic had worked brilliantly, the true key to victory was her huge and stable reserve of spiritual energy. The thought of his sister's strength filled Lin Yuan with trepidation. He bitterly admitted that his own energy reserves were still too low to be considered a true professional. The situation was complicated by the fact that the exclusive skill, Clock Spread, set extremely strict requirements for leveling up Mobius himself. He had to start this long, grueling journey from the very bottom, namely, from the first level of the ordinary rank. While Lin Yuan was lost in his dark thoughts, the spirit bird suddenly took off into a jet-like flight. Taken aback by the maneuver, the young man panicked and called out to the driver, reminding him that they still needed to pick up some groceries. The driver snapped sarcastically. He was already behind schedule waiting for Lin Yuan, and now he was driving as fast as he could to avoid a bad review. Instead of stopping, he suggested ordering everything through StarNet. The Strauss delivery service would deliver the goods the same day. After a frantic flight, they finally landed. The spirit bird looked completely exhausted. Concerned, Lin Yuan asked if the unfortunate creature was all right. The driver dismissed the matter lightly. The bird was fine. The trip had been successful, and the cargo had been delivered safely. As he parted, he insistently asked Lin Yuan for a positive review, to which the young man quickly agreed. Impressed by the speed of delivery, Lin Yuan recognized online shopping as a brilliant invention. He firmly resolved to open his own online store to forever rid himself of the dangerous and tedious trips to the spiritual creature market. The scene shifted to Lin Yuan's cozy home. Stepping through the door, the young man loudly greeted his faithful pets, Smarty and Yin Yin, announcing his return. Smarty and Yin Yin rushed to greet their master. Yin Yin asked, offended, why he'd been gone for so long, and Smarty admitted that they both missed him terribly. However, the very next second, Smart Guy's mood changed dramatically to the diametrically opposite. The pet suddenly became completely indifferent to its owner's prolonged absence. He proudly declared that he was now in a state of profound, mortal resentment. Yin Yin tried to calm her friend down, reminding Smarty that she'd given him a ride earlier that day. Lin Yuan also intervened, promising to always take them with him from now on. But Smarty remained adamant. He pompously declared that he had every right to be angry for another 2 days, and even the most delicious food in the world would not make him change his anger to mercy. Lin Yuan simply laughed heartily, delighted by his protégé's childish innocence. To Smarty's great happiness, the young man had been prepared for such an icy reception and had already devised a plan for reconciliation. He pulled out a luxurious gift from his bag, prepared in advance. He explained to Smarty that it had been ordered especially for him as a gesture of apology. The gift's delicious aroma made Smarty forget his grievances. He admitted he physically couldn't refuse such a divine treat. Saving face, Smarty declared that his anger had only temporarily subsided. Lin Yuan nodded with a smile, accepting the terms of this amusing game. The owner promised Smarty to buy him a treat every day if he liked it. Hearing this, Yin Yin began to fuss, demanding attention. She eagerly asked if there was a surprise for her too. Lin Yuan presented Yin Yin with an elite green vine as a personal food source. The bird was delighted, and, remembering its previous prohibitions, began to eat along with its other pet. Taking a break from his meal, Smarty asked Lin Yuan if he would join them. The young man politely declined, suggesting that his pets continue their meal. He explained that he urgently needed to sort through a pile of delivered goods, but the sight of the towering mountain of boxes left him slightly shocked. He sighed heavily and admitted to himself that he hadn't expected such an abundance of things. The smart guy agreed with the owner. The sheer volume of purchases was truly daunting. Yin Yin's keen eye spotted an unusual plant among the boxes. Lin Yuan followed her gaze and saw a strange flower he hadn't ordered. Lin Yuan examined the mysterious flower and found a note. The lily of the valley was a bonus for purchasing 100 green vines. The young man stood there in amazement, stunned by the generosity of such a deal. A sudden thought made Lin Yuan stop in his tracks. He realized that the bonus plant was a jasmine lily. Lin Yuan chided himself for forgetting. His ideal partners were healing and plant-type creatures. Realizing this, he knew he had finally found the perfect solution. Upon seeing the healing plant, Lin Yuan ordered his pets to guard the elite green vine on the first floor. The clever one obediently confirmed that the task had been accepted. Lin Yuan grabbed Lilia and ran to the bedroom. Having made his decision, he mentally commanded himself to immediately begin testing the plan. He began transmitting spiritual energy to the plant, activating a unique skill. The command to activate spiritual lock sounded in the room. Despite his exhaustion and poor concentration, Lin Yuan continued the process he had started, determined not to retreat even though his mental strength was in a deplorable state. Continuously pouring energy into the plant, he finally heard the long-awaited notification. A soulless voice confirmed the successful conclusion of the contract. Having completed the spiritual lock, Lin Yuan was pleased to find that his mental reserves were stable. The influx of energy now allowed him to begin enhancing his pet. An hour later, Lin Yuan successfully completed the leveling process. Lily Lyra reached the first stage of the elite rank and legendary quality with the healing skill. His thoughts then turned to the main artifact, the Mobius bracelet. Without wasting any time, he opened the interface to check his partner's status. The bracelet's rank has risen to the first level of elite, unlocking the skill Calm of Mind. In deep shock, the hero realized that his rank had indeed increased. Suddenly, Mobius forcefully pulled Lin Yuan's consciousness inside himself. Finding himself inside the mysterious space and looking around, he realized this was what the famous Mobius space looked like from the inside. Memory told him it had become twice as spacious. The silence of the surreal place was broken by Mobius's own voice. The entity asked if he could hear it, to which Lin Yuan only smiled. The hero confirmed that he could hear his partner crystal clear. He noted with a touch of nostalgia that it had been a long time since their last conversation. Then came a block of information about the world order. It explained that the contract with the spirit beast consumed a great deal of mental energy. An ordinary person could subjugate 2 or 3 creatures in a lifetime, 5 at most. But the ability to spiritually block was unique to Mobius. It provided the effect of a standard contract, but without the owner's energy consumption. The entire fee was taken from Mobius's own internal reserves. The contract limit depended on the bracelet's level. But the price was high. After the merger, Lin Yuan lost his spiritual and mental strength for 10 years. To sum it up, Lin Yuan bitterly admitted that even now, his overall condition left much to be desired. The scene shifted to a dreamlike space, and Lin Yuan asked Xiao Wu if he had finally regained the ability to speak. Xiao Wu flew up to Lin Yuan's face. Transformed, he glowed with a golden aura and replied that he could do it immediately once he reached the elite rank. Lin looked around and asked about this place. Xiao Wu confirmed. This was his clock spirit space, where Lin could store creatures and change everything. Lin noticed a pool devoid of spiritual qi and asked about its purpose. Xiao Wu calmly confirmed that it was indeed empty. Upon learning that it was just ordinary water, Lin Yuan scratched his head in confusion. Trying to comprehend this, he moved on to the next topic. Xiao Wu philosophically remarked that water brings wealth. Lin looked at him differently, noting his vibrant, unique personality. Then, he silently and without warning threw a stone into the water. The stone thrown into the water glowed brightly. Lin realized that even cheap stones here radiated qi, without the inevitable losses in the external environment. Xiao Wu confirmed that the space was holding qi. Lin was delighted. If he placed the best stones here, the creature's enhancement efficiency would skyrocket. Xiao Wu agreed, adding that as one's rank increased, the space's operating time would increase. Lin grew serious. That would require a ton of Federation coins. Energy stones of any kind were expensive, so earning money became a pressing need. Suddenly, Xiao Wu began to disappear. This greatly frightened the young man. Xiao Wu reassured him that everything was fine. It was just that he could only maintain a state of clear communication for half an hour a day, and time was up. As he disappeared, Xiao Wu expressed deep regret for the loss of Lin's spiritual power over the 10 years of their contract. But the young man replied with a smile that it was nothing. These years had taught him a lot. When the spirit disappeared, Lin thought with a smile that he now had hope again. Although the road ahead was still long, he put the bracelet back on. The real test was just beginning. But right now, the irresistible force of sleep turned out to be much more important for the young man. It was the umpteenth day of hard work. Lin was improving Lily, Inin sang while Smarty studied the computer. While working, the young man did not notice how night had fallen. Surprised by the late hour, he turned around and saw the two sleeping pets. And Smarty even muttered something. What stupid little animals they are. Lin quietly walked into the next room. Turning on the bright light, he looked at his spiders and immediately began treating them. Lin happily noted that leveling up had helped. Both web-spitting spiders were saved, and 7 days later, Brother Yang stood outside Lin's shop, praying to the heavens and hoping to change his life. This time, his bet was going to pay off. Opening the door, Yan thought, growing 100 green crawlers so quickly is unrealistic. What luck to find a shop with a true creator at the helm. It was like a jackpot. When Ian walked in, he froze for a second. Then Lin Yuan greeted him warmly, remarking that he had been looking forward to this visit. Brother Yang only laughed. Yan laughingly reminded them that he had an urgent need. Lin gestured for the guest to enter, and he immediately offered to take a look at the finished product. The young man silently hoped the deal would save his rented base. At the same time, Yan, who had just entered, saw the multitude of jasmine lilies and beamed. Lin announced that the entire order was ready. Reminding him that Yan needed 76 more pots, he suggested simply choosing them from the 100. Weeping with joy, Yan grabbed the young man's hand and began shaking it, shouting that Lin had saved his life. He modestly replied that the guest was very flattering. Lin was surprised by such a heated reaction. Meanwhile, Brother Yang asked for the final price, promising not to haggle over a single cent. Lin was satisfied with the previous price. Hearing this, Yan almost burst into tears. He had met a truly noble man with whom he was ready to become a brother. Yan, yanking himself from thoughts of familiarity, froze. Embarrassed, Lin called out to him. Coming to his senses, the guest joyfully agreed to buy all the flowers. After paying for the order and picking up the pots, Yan, acting strangely, prepared to leave for the base. He insistently invited Lin to visit the nursery, promising the best products. After saying goodbye, Lin promised to stop by. Watching him go, the young man marveled at Yang's happiness and thought that the profession of a creator is truly wonderful. Returning to the suddenly empty room, he decided to replenish his supplies. Then Lin asked Smarty about his progress with registering with the Star Network. Smarty tearfully reported the situation. Lin rushed to him and checked his pet status. It was now an elite-ranked 100 questions beast with a precise memory. The skill allowed for detailed data analysis. Meanwhile, a tearful Smarty complained of gaining weight. Lin, however, thought it was just his fur getting fluffy. Picking up his pet, Lin reassured him. Smarty hadn't gotten fat. He'd simply leveled up and reached elite rank. The cat asked incredulously. The young man asked the cat if he felt smarter. He proudly declared that it was just his talent. He could now remember information worth not 1 cookie, but 5. It seems cookies have displaced pork as the cat's favorite food. After praising the cat, Lin warned that he would often need its help in the future. Smarty proudly ordered everyone to rely on him for everything. Lin asked where Yin Yin was, and immediately heard her cry. She called for her master, screaming that something bad had happened. Lin shuddered with déjà vu. An alarmed Yin Yin ran up to him. Frightened, he asked if she was sick, as she seemed to have shrunk. Smarty, with a knowing look, suggested that the bird had simply leveled up, just like he had. Lin Yuan decided to personally check her current status. The status read, Elite Rank Soundbird with the skills Sonic Spike and Turbulence. Lin was surprised that both skills were combat-oriented. She has a wonderful voice, but her skills aren't related to singing. Smarty admitted they'd already tested them and showed a board with a trace of a sound spike. Yin Yin timidly confirmed that they had played without him. Smarty suggested checking if her power had increased, and soon the 3 of them went out into the garden for testing. Smarty raised the wooden board high above his head. Yin Yin anxiously warned her friend that he was standing too close to the target and that it was extremely dangerous. Lin solemnly announced the beginning of the experiment. Confident in his friend's accuracy, Smarty boldly gave the command to open fire on the designated target. The bird attacked the board. Seeing its devastating force, the cat was terrified. Lin calmed him down and suggested that they also test the turbulence skill. Yin Yin summoned a tornado that tore the board into pieces. Shocked by the strength that was unprecedented for an ordinary rank, Lin realized that she had become a real fighter. The scene changed. The courier arrived, informed the boss that the ordered goods were at the door, and asked him to sign for the delivery. Meanwhile, Smarty suggested that Lin Yuan test the Yin Yin skill again, claiming that it would break through the iron plate. Lin Yuan took the order inside and objected to Smarty on the way, reminding him that they'd seen this before and that Yin Yin was tired. Smarty complained about his boring skills. Lin Yuan ordered Yin Yin to rest, reminding the pet that he was a beast of 100 questions. He explained that Smarty would be useful later. The pet's eyes lit up, and he asked hopefully if this was true, and what exactly should be done. Lin Yuan ordered 2 web-spitting spiders to be fed. Smarty, in fear, handed them a lily and asked the spiders not to bite him. Yuan realized that the fear of spiders was an instinct of spiritual beings. Yuan reassured his pet, instructing him to later record data on the spiritual beings in the store. From now on, these matters would be Smarty's responsibility. The 2 spiders' bodies began to glow differently, something Smarty immediately noticed. Lin Yuan explained that they were about to advance in rank. The spiders began to cover themselves in webs and instantly retreated into cocoons. Smarty was amazed by their simultaneous evolution. Yuan replied that it was like the iron-horned rhinoceros. They were already awaiting their evolution, but they were gravely wounded. Once their life force was replenished, their advancement was only a matter of time. After 2 hours, the spiders evolved. The system returned a direction, prehistoric reversal. The trait, a fierce venom, rendering the body and web toxic. The second direction is a spiritual mutation with the sticky web trait for increased control. Smarty marveled at such different paths of evolution. Lin Yuan hadn't expected this, noting Brother Yang's strong foundation. Yuan went upstairs, and Smarty asked about the sale, saying that the store was registered on the StarNet. Yuan offered to take a look. He opened the computer, and a window appeared asking for the store's name, which angered the boy. Why did he have to type the name again? Smarty explained that he'd left it for him to participate. Lin Yuan thought for a moment and then typed, "Spiritual Beast Shop, no loss. Nickname, Dense Old Forest." Smarty complained that the name was outdated after so many problems. Yuan countered that the name meant not to suffer losses or be deceived, and that it was simple and easy to remember, so it was quite good. Putting away the monitor, Yuan told Smarty to take his time with the Star Network map test. He was almost finished, and asked if everything just needed to be scanned. Yuan installed the card, and the scanning process, which Smarty describes as steep, began. With its help, he scanned all his plants and 2 spiders. When Smarty asked, Yuan replied that scanning spiders was a priority. Lin decided he'd scan his cat too, and asked where the pet was planning to run. Smarty admitted that he hadn't expected the main character to attack from behind, but upon hearing about the virtual world, he was shocked and asked where it was. Yuan explained that it was a Star Network showcase, requiring a complex application and not a regular website. Smarty marveled at how it was twice as spacious as their home. Yuan explained that the Star Network was a world of real data in the form of a virtual image. Smarty asked why the household items hadn't transferred over. Yuan hesitated and replied that virtual decorations cost money. Smarty found this reason very realistic, and Yuan agreed with him. Having sorted out the menu, Yuan suggested exploring the Star Network community. He pressed a button, the landscape changed, and they entered a virtual world. Smarty's eyes lit up, and Yuan told him not to run. The pet estimated the place at 80 servings of braised pork, then called his owner over to look at something. Yuan saw that it was a furniture decor store. He agreed and suggested they see if they could buy some furniture for their store. A robot approached them and asked what they needed. Smarty was surprised by the talking iron block. but Lin Yuan explained that it was an intelligent robot. Yuan asked for 2 flower stands and a counter. He listed their exact specifications, and the robot led them to another floor, where, after what he saw, Yuan decided not to buy anything for now. 100,000 for the stand. Spending money like that was wrong. Smarty declared he would make the furniture by hand. Meanwhile, Yuan asked the robot about the cheapest chairs. The robot led them to the chairs. Yuan wanted to take at least something for the guests, but when he saw the price of 15,000 for an ordinary chair, he was completely discouraged. Smarty offered a maximum of 1,000 coins. Otherwise, they wouldn't need the chair. The robot replied that bargaining was beyond its authority, and the friends left disappointed. Smarty admitted the bargaining had failed. Yuan suggested they forget about it, since they were communicating with a machine, and decided to stop by the bookstore one last time. When Smarty asked, Yuan reminded him of his plans to take the creator exam, which was why he needed the textbooks. They entered another bookstore. Yuan was surprised by their number and entrusted the matter to Smarty. He presented the robot with a long list of basic and advanced books on spiritual materials and beings. The robot responded with 327 books, along with a gift catalog. Yuan gave his address and asked to pack everything into a knowledge chip for delivery. The robot asked him to sign an agreement that the books were for family use only. Otherwise, the association would punish him for leaking them. Yuan finished his business and smiled. It was time to go back. Yuan thought it would be a good idea to buy such a smart robot for the store. After teleporting home to the store, a girl stopped him. She shouted, "Wow!" She saw the main character finally appear. The girl asked if he was the store owner, and complained that he didn't have a robot assistant, which is why she had to wait a long time and stupidly for him. Yuan apologized, saying the store had just opened today and the robot wasn't there yet. He silently noted the girl's arrogance, even though she was the same age as Xiao Se. The girl asked the price of the spiders, calling him uncle. Yuan's face instantly changed. He indignantly asked again if he really looked like an uncle to her. The girl walked ahead, asking for information about spiders and their prices. She also asked not to set a too high price. After all, she reminded him, the name of the store was No Losses. Smarty, standing behind him, couldn't help but burst out laughing. The uncle pointed to a spider with thin legs and a sticky web. The girl asked, disappointed, if that meant it wasn't poisonous. Understanding the client's request, Lin Yuan immediately moved on to another option. He suggested looking at a large green spider if she needed venom. Yuan explained that the main unique feature of this species was its fierce venom. As soon as he said this, the large spider suddenly rose to its feet. The girl was terrified by the sudden movement, screamed and jumped back. Out of fear, she lost her balance and fell to the floor with a loud thud. The victim groaned, complaining that the store floor was too hard. The blow knocked her cap off, and Lin Yuan was literally stunned. The client's head was completely bald and smooth. He suddenly decided that the girl's head really did resemble a hard-boiled egg, but he immediately pulled himself away from these inappropriate thoughts. He firmly told himself no, deciding he couldn't laugh at the client. Yuan reminded himself that he was a professional manager, so he mentally ordered himself to endure and keep his cool. But Smarty, filled with childish spontaneity, couldn't contain himself at all. He screamed loudly, pointing directly at the bald egg. The girl's face flushed with embarrassment, and she let out a loud scream. She quickly stood up, brushed off her clothes, and pretended to be very serious. The protagonist grabbed his cat and apologized, saying he'd been a bit of a jerk. The smart guy also apologized to the girl. The girl began to defend herself, wanting to clarify the situation. She explained that it was a side effect of the treatment for the ghost spider bite. She confidently declared that her hair would definitely grow back in a few months, and she was definitely not a bald egg. Hearing the name of the rare spider, Lin Yuan sank deep into thought. The ghost spiny spider was quite unusual. Yuan felt as if he'd heard this strange and frightening name somewhere before, but the boy couldn't remember where exactly he'd encountered him. Yuan changed the subject. He politely asked if it was possible she had a strong liking for spider-like spiritual creatures. Hearing this question, the girl visibly tensed. The next second, she began to tremble violently, as if she'd just been electrocuted. Lin Yuan asked, Isn't she a client? The frightened female client let out a loud, piercing shriek. She hastened to assure the guy that she absolutely disliked these horrible creatures. Now Lin Yuan was even more confused than before. He asked, genuinely confused, why she'd been looking for spiders in particular, and even touching them. The upset girl answered, her expression tearful and hurt. Through her tears, she explained that her magical affinity was for arachnids. Only now did Lin Yuan finally understand everything clearly. He thought there were sad cases, where a person's innate affinity type completely clashed with their personal preferences. Someone who hated spiders the most was, ironically, doomed to make contracts only with them. The boy continued to ponder silently. On the other hand, he noted that the category of arachnid spiritual beings was extremely large. Therefore, the direction of its development was also broad. Most importantly, the treatment for ghost spider venom was quite expensive. This was clearly the impressive power of my parents' vast wealth. Yuan chuckled. If he had to raise a hateful creature, he'd dig himself a hole. At that very moment, the frustrated girl waved her hand. The client firmly refused, explaining that the pet she needed was definitely not available. Lin Yuan asked her to wait, offering either of these two spiders. He added that control and strong venom are very popular for a good fight. But the stubborn girl remained firm. She flatly refused, declaring that the spider's unique traits were too weak. She needed a spider with powerful control abilities. Hearing such requests, Lin Yuan was truly shocked. He wondered if these two capable spiders were really considered weak. Frustrated and demanding, the girl finally spoke up. She firmly declared that she didn't care at all about their base strength. She simply desperately needed a spider whose exclusive feature was its transparent web. Lin Yuan quickly began doing the math in his head. The manager concluded that this young woman was truly rich and stubborn. The transparent web was an extremely rare and exclusive ability. You could waste 20 spiders on orders and not get this trait. But then, suddenly, a bright light bulb of a brilliant idea lit up his head. Yuan confidently offered his services, believing he could handle it. He claimed to know how to fulfill the order for an epic quality spider. The man matter-of-factly asked the customer to tell him exactly how many spiders she needed. The woman looked at the bold manager with great suspicion. She asked if he really thought she was a naive child, easily deceived, or if he thought she'd trust him just because he was handsome. Hearing this accusation, Lin Yuan's face visibly flushed with shame. He expressed genuine indignation, asking the client point-blank who was trying to deceive her. But then, the young man suddenly froze in place. Had this girl really just called him handsome? His heart quickly swelled with pride at the unexpected compliment. The manager was determined to take on this challenging order, and not because of the praise, but because he couldn't bear to watch this sick girl suffer. Yes, he decided he was simply too kind. However, outwardly, he tried to maintain his composure. Yuan calmly said good, and noted that if she went around 100 more stores, she would hardly find the spider she needed. Having said this, he turned to leave, and Smarty teased her. Small shouted loudly at the disgruntled client to leave. The girl suddenly panicked and ran quickly to stop them. Changing her tone, she hurriedly asked the guy to wait at least a minute. Lin Yuan slowly turned around, skillfully feigning aloofness. The manager asked what had happened, reminding her that she herself had refused to trust him. After a moment's hesitation, the embarrassed girl timidly asked. The client hopefully asked if he really had a reliable way to get the spider. Yuan declared that if she didn't trust his honest word, then there was no way. Hearing this, the girl calmed down and gently tried to negotiate. The client suggested they simply add each other as friends on Star Network first. She asked him to notify her when he got the spider he needed, and she would buy it. Lin Yuan merely smiled contentedly to himself at her naive words. The cunning salesman thought it was an excellent step backwards for the sake of confidently moving forward. A truly classic move in the world of big business. Over the years, he had accumulated ample experience working with this type of difficult client. Therefore, the manager immediately abandoned the deal. The guy coldly declared that such actions were completely unnecessary. He suggested that she simply return to the store when she wanted to buy something. The girl playfully apologized for her mistrust, blaming it on the shop's lack of decor. She promised not to haggle over the order, and Lin Yuan, unable to withstand the pressure, gave in. After that, he himself suggested adding each other as virtual friends online. The salesman and the customer simultaneously pulled out their personal cards. With a short beep, the network connection was successfully established. Seeing the nickname Dark Old Forest, the girl burst into laughter, loud enough for the entire store to hear. She was genuinely amused, calling Lin Yuan's username childishly stupid. Lin Yuan teased Cloud Creek by asking about eagle sharks. The girl seethed with indignation, taking the joke for an insult, and shouted angrily at the salesman. Lin Yuan tried to justify himself, but the angry client caught him in a lie. To smooth things over, he reminded her about the rare order, to which the important client demanded they stop arguing. Lin Yuan received a notification that the 10 shining coins had been deposited. The wealthy client smugly announced that the payment had been made and that she was now awaiting good news. Lin Yuan was shocked. The wealthy guest paid 10 coins instead of the usual 2. Smarty was delighted by such an easy profit when he saw the account balance. He asked if this meant they would now be rich. The smart guy reminded them that he'd long wanted to buy himself an expensive record player and sound system. Lin Yuan cooled his friend's ardor. 10 coins was merely an advance payment under the supervision of the Star Network. Considering Brother Yang's morning payment, the boy decided to check the market prices for spiders. Lin Yuan's balance plummeted from 3.4 to 2.4 shining coins. He was shocked. The value of 5 initial elite rank spiders was a whole coin. Smarty screamed in panic when he saw his balance had dropped by a third. Lin Yuan noted with bitterness that Brother Yang's money had vanished before it could even warm his pocket. Under normal cultivation, he would have gone broke on spiritual materials. No wonder the bald girl so readily gave up 10 shining coins. Smarty was worried about breaking even, but Lin Yuan reassured his friend by mentioning the new robot. At the same time, the young man acknowledged the need to save money for future expansion of the storefronts. Smarty reminded him that he hadn't had any clients before and criticized the stupid old robot. Lin Yuan encouraged his friend, urging him to believe in the profits from the bald client's order. Smarty sighed resignedly, realizing that arguing with his stubborn owner was futile. The cat went off to play with Yin, and Lin Yuan cheerfully promised his friend to quickly return all the money. As soon as Smarty left, Lin Yuan's expression turned serious. Enough of the idle chatter and jokes. It was time to get to work. The young man decided it was time for an important conversation with Xiao Yu. The next moment, the familiar surroundings smoothly changed. Finding himself inside the mysterious space of the Mobius spiritual castle, Lin Yuan looked around. Just as he arrived, the boy called out. Yuan asked Xiao Yu about the next being. Mobius appeared, sternly declaring the current approach fundamentally flawed and reminding them of the need to conserve resources. The spirit insisted on strict financial control, but Lin Yuan only smiled confidently. He agreed with the importance of money, but reminded him that investing in personal power would allow him to earn money much faster. Lin Yuan admitted he'd been pondering the next blocked being for a long time. Having made a firm decision, the young man nevertheless sought Xiao Yu's wise, expert opinion. After hearing these words, the ancient spirit Mobius asked the young man to speak openly about his bold plans. Mobius braced himself, and Lin Yuan's eyes flashed with unprecedented determination. Taking a deep breath, the young man finally spoke the chosen name clearly. Goldfish. The scene suddenly changed. Lin Yuan was wandering down the party street, deep in thought. The young man was surprised to note Zhao Mo's rare compliance, and his thoughts involuntarily returned to their recent conversation. Zhao Mo readily agreed to the fish idea, but warned that, due to its appearance, it would require 10 times more spiritual energy than other fairies. Lin Yuan considered this a solvable problem. He guessed that in moments of weakness, the spirit forcibly contracted its mental strength to protect its master. The young man considered it his duty to find a way to quickly restore his partner. Zhao Mo just smiled, giving him free rein. Returning to the present, Lin Yuan opened the system interface and decided to try out the Star Network search function first. The result amazed him. The search instantly turned up a street of goldfish shops, although they mostly only offered the regular rank. Wanting to find the elite rank, he wanted to filter out the best shops. Then a massive display case appeared in front of him, and he stepped inside. Assessing the interior, Lin Yuan estimated the area to be about 800 square meters. It seemed the space had been deliberately compressed for the sake of better display. Noticing the dense arrangement of products with interfaces, he decided to copy the design. At that moment, the owner, Jessen, approached him. Smiling, she offered assistance and a tour, apologizing for any service shortcomings due to the entire staff being on holiday. Lin Yuan was relieved to realize that the person in front of him was a living person and not a robot, and voiced his intention to purchase the spiritual goldfish. Jessen led him to a large pool. She explained that all the small fish of the common rank were worth half a shining coin each. The owner pointed to a large, elite rank red fish for 5 shining coins. Lin Yuan's eyes narrowed as he watched it. The fish lived up to their reputation as energy restorers, saturating the aura. However, the price was steep. A regular fish cost more than a premium spider. Buying a premium was beyond his means. Jessen added that it wasn't even the best breed, otherwise the price would have started at 7 coins. Common rank fish were priced the same, due to the difficulty of evolution and the refusal of masters to take them on. Lin Yuan thanked him for the advice. Jessen laughed and asked to be called Sister Exion, and added that the choice of a particular fish depends only on his intuition. Studying fish, the young man reasoned that the best choice in terms of potential would be a dragonite type, capable of awakening the dragon bloodline. Casting aside any doubts about his luck, he decided to test whether his sealed spiritual space was capable of accelerating the development of these creatures. If successful, his store would have a clear core product. Eventually, the young man's gaze settled on a slightly silly-looking black fish. Jessen approved of the choice and asked if anything else was needed. Lin Yuan thought the pool in the space needed testing as well. He asked out loud for energy ore. Jessen offered a discount for bulk purchase, quoting 500 federal coins per kilogram. The buyer offered to take 2,000 kilograms of ore. Upon hearing such a huge quantity, a stunned Jessen literally froze in her tracks. Lin Yuan swiped his card with a smile. Jessen quickly promised that Ostrich Service would deliver everything to his address. Thinking she was dealing with a major client buying ore and dragon eyes, Jessen suddenly remembered something and added an important detail. She recommended buying butterfly shells for raising fish. Despite the price, they work wonders for promoting fairies. Sincerely thanking Exion for her foresight, the young man paid the bill. His balance dropped from 0.9 shining coins to 0. His heart sank with pain at the sight of the vanished coins. He consoled himself with the thought that the fish's food supply would last 3 to 5 months. Jessen suggested adding each other on the Star Network for direct communication, assuring him that she could get anything he wanted, as long as he had the money. Lin Yuan handed over the card, saying it was an honor. He realized that direct orders for rare materials would be much more convenient. He said he'd place another order later. Jessen guessed with a smile. He'd need ore, butterfly shells, and a few fish. Lin Yuan confirmed, clarifying that low-grade ore was sufficient. Jessen was surprised, as only high-grade ore contained pure energy. Low-grade ore was only suitable for common and elite-ranked spirits. She wondered how large his breeding base was. He probably has a whole factory. Realizing that customer retention would generate a flow of orders, the woman remembered the main highlight and true specialization of her store. Looking at Lin Yuan, she offered a special service for regular customers. Intrigued, the young man asked for more details. Jessen explained that in addition to ransoming fairies, they also supply seriously wounded but fresh and whole creatures, ideal for special materials. Lin Yuan's eyes lit up as he asked about the next shipment. Jessen replied that it would arrive in 3 weeks and promised to let him know. The young man estimated that the funds would be recouped in 3 weeks, giving him room to maneuver. He headed for the exit, but paused for a moment. He was surprised by the silence in such a well-maintained store. Jessen asked if he'd forgotten about the 100 sequence match on the Stairway of Radiance. It turned out that most of the people had gone to watch the spectacle. Lin Yuan asked if they were members of the Crimson 100. Jessen replied that the level above was the Shining 100 of the Federation. Realizing the scale of the event, Lin Yuan was surprised. Then he left and said goodbye to Zhou. She nodded, reminding him that the goods would be delivered soon. Checking his phone as he walked, Lin Yuan discovered with annoyance that the match had already begun. Taking a ticket to the high platform, he decided not to miss the chance to see the Federation's strongest young martial artists. He wanted to understand just how big the gap was between them and Shaoxi. When Lin Yuan arrived, the place was packed, and the roar of the crowd could be heard outside. Feeling tired from the climb, he muttered discontentedly, "Why did the Star Network still have areas with regular staircases?" The match was already underway, and he was glad of the unlimited tickets to the top. Suddenly, he heard loud cheers from Lord White Devil and Lord Shiranui. Lin Yuan was baffled as to why some idiot fan was supporting both sides at once. His gaze fell on a girl watching the match through a telescope. She was enthusiastically shouting out the fighters' names, predicting victory. Lin Yuan froze. He recognized her. Remembering the boiled egg in Cloud Creek, the girl lowered the telescope and saw Lin Yuan's face. She called him uncle in alarm, noticing his enormous fat face. Lin Yuan sighed and advised her to at least lower the telescope first. The girl's attention returned to the match. Raising her binoculars, she began to speak cheerfully. She declared that there were no rules against rooting for both sides. She didn't care who won. She would still be happy and asked if he understood that. The girl then asked who he supported more. Lin Yuan hesitantly replied that, like her, he supported both. Suddenly, she grabbed his hand. Calling the young man Dark Forest, the girl was genuinely pleased with his good taste. The young man smiled and agreed that they were both excellent. However, he thought to himself that he couldn't admit his ignorance of either participant. Realizing that she was holding Lin Yuan's hand, the girl froze for a moment. Then she jerked her hand away and began rubbing her palms as if cleaning them. Lin Yuan's expression darkened, reminding him that she had grabbed him first. Ignoring this, the girl handed him something, saying, "Here, take it." She explained that since he was rooting for both teams, he couldn't miss the details of the battle, and simply listening to the announcer wasn't enough. With that, she handed him a pair of binoculars. The young man thanked her sincerely. As he accepted the item, he thought that, despite all her mischief, the girl had a kind soul. Lin Yuan watched the match through binoculars. It seemed to him that the participants were completely different types of martial professionals. Soon his gaze focused on two specific creatures. He wondered if these two plants resembled healing-type spiritual fairies. The girl nodded approvingly, praised his eyesight, and again calling the young man by his nickname, asked who, in his opinion, would win. Observing, he assumed the higher-ranked participant had the advantage. He also added that all their creatures were already gold-ranked. In the arena, the girl ordered the beast to strike with molten lava. The lava bear obeyed, its massive paw immediately becoming covered in lava, and he attacked forward, filling the entire field with his liquid, hellish fire. On the other side stood a beast, similar to a snow tree. The opponent calmly commanded the Kabisca tree to use cold on the ice soul grass. The beast reacted instantly, unleashing a chilling attack. The announcer loudly blared into the microphone the combined actions of the snow tree and the ice grass. The bear's mistress grinned at the strong defense. Promising to break it, she commanded the beast to use an explosive charge to stop the snow tree. The lava bear charged forward furiously, causing explosions across the battlefield. Lin Yuan, watching carefully, muttered about the intensity of the attack. The girl explained that Lady Shiranui was an assault-type fighter. Compared to the White Devil healer, she objectively had a better chance of winning. Lin Yuan objected. The White Devil's rank is still higher. Then the announcer's voice was heard, announcing Daisy the White Devil in 18th place in the rankings. Soon, Daisy successfully healed the tree and subdued the lava bear. The announcer continued, introducing Anna Shiranui, ranked 47th. Anna laughed sharply, acknowledging Daisy's strength. She hadn't expected that under such a fierce onslaught, she would be able to find the strength to save both of her creatures. Anna warned that her attack wasn't just a single wave. The animals clashed again. Under the bear's onslaught, the snow tree merely passively defended itself. The announcer dramatically asked if the scales were tipping. Anna pressed on, noting that the war of attrition had been going on for half an hour. She mockingly asked if the enemy's chi wasn't recovering. Lin Yuan wondered if a healer was weaker than a stormtrooper, even at a high rank. coldly stating that the gap between 18th and 47th place is huge, Daisy immediately commanded her spirit to use cold. Her beast immediately created a strong ice barrier. Daisy continued her attack, commanding the ice grass to use the extreme cold seal. The technique worked, freezing the lava bears in place. Anna marveled in disbelief at her opponent's ability to perform such a powerful feat after such a long battle. The announcer announced the bears were frozen. However, the announcer added that the condition of the snow tree and grass also left much to be desired. The girl carefully analyzed the situation out loud. She noted that the White Devil had interrupted Shiranui's furious attack. But the seal would only last for a short time. Once it wore off, Shiranui would complete his counterattack. Lin Yuan countered, saying it was more complicated than that, since the White Devil was a healer. And then, Daisy ordered the rebirth butterfly to use the wings of rebirth. The shining butterfly's enormous wings spread across the arena. Both of Daisy's beasts began to recover rapidly, their strength growing as their wounds healed. The crowd erupted in shouts, amazed at the healing at the wave of a hand. Spectators discussed how, even before they had fully recovered, the animals were already capable of fighting. Clenching her fists, Anna acknowledged Daisy's skill, but declared that she would still win. Her huge bear suddenly rushed towards Daisy's smaller beast. The giant platinum rank fluid flame bear pressed down with a level. Daisy narrowed her eyes, admitting she hadn't expected such progress. But there is a but. The staff suddenly opened, and a huge red butterfly of energy fluttered from it. Soon, countless butterflies flew in and circled around Daisy. Anna roared that any move she made would not break this critical attack and defense flame strike. Anna declared that she had been practicing this powerful strike specifically to defeat Daisy. In response, Daisy merely calmly sent her swarm of butterflies forward. The butterflies instantly crashed straight into the huge lava bear. The mighty beast let out a piercing cry, and blood flew out of its mouth, before collapsing heavily to the ground. Anna froze in disbelief. Her legs buckled, and she fell to her knees. The announcer loudly declared that the winner was White Devil Daisy. It was announced that Daisy had won, receiving a Star of Fame. Anna bitterly admitted she hadn't expected the butterfly to evolve into a fancy breed on gold. She acknowledged a justifiable defeat. Smiling softly, Daisy offered Anna her hand and corrected it, noting that it wasn't a rebirth butterfly at all. She explained that the spirit had evolved, becoming a calamity butterfly. Daisy then asked her friend to perk up for the crowd watching them. The crowd literally erupted, chanting the names of both participants. The girl jumped excitedly, admiring Lady White Devil's awesomeness. She added that the defeated Shiranui was truly explosive. Lin Yuan watched in awe, amazed by the sheer awesomeness of this fight. Comparing this match to Chu Shi's school fights, he dismissed them as child's play. He wondered if this was the supreme fighting prowess of the Radiance Federation's youth. It was time for Cloudstream to say goodbye. Before leaving, she reminded Yuan not to forget about her web-spitting spiders. Yuan couldn't shake the thought of how terrifying this fantasy appearance was. A gold-ranked healing-type spiritual being had actually overcome the level difference and defeated a platinum-ranked combat-type spiritual being. The rune in his hand was the key that allowed a spiritual being to evolve into a fantasy form, and by a lucky coincidence, it was especially suited for healing spiritual beings. However, the only healing creature he possessed at the time was Lily Luara. He knew it was too early to worry about that. At that very moment, he suddenly heard Yin Yin muttering some poetic nonsense. Yuan went to his room and asked what they were doing, since he could clearly hear them even from downstairs. The pair were terrified. The smart guy immediately switched tabs and scolded Yuan for not knocking. Yuan didn't understand why he had to knock on his own door. This only fueled his curiosity about what exactly they were hiding. The smart guy was sweating profusely as he explained that Yin Yin was simply practicing singing and he was helping her find the notes. Yuan told Smarty to clear some space. He needed to look up some information. Yin Yin whispered to Smarty, making sure Yuan hadn't noticed. Smarty replied that everything was fine, explaining that he'd closed the computer quickly enough and that the account had been registered secretly so Yuan wouldn't know anything. Yuan read about the requirements for upgrading a copper-ranked spiritual being to legendary quality. At a minimum, a C-rank spiritual key was required. Otherwise, he would have simply put 2 web-spitting spiders up for auction online. They would have fetched a hefty price anyway. At that moment, someone rang the doorbell, so Yuan went downstairs. It was Ostrich Logistics. Courier 457 had delivered the goods Yuan had purchased from Star Network, right on schedule. The senior courier urged his newbie partner to move the valuables faster. The smart guy became curious. Yuan casually explained that all this was intended for the future development of the store. The girl carried several boxes and introduced herself as An Neng, but immediately corrected herself, saying that she was Courier Trainee 3451. Noticing that she was holding the boxes incorrectly and that they were about to slip out, Yuan intervened and offered to carry them for her. The aquarium at the very top suddenly tilted. The smart guy immediately rushed to catch him. He managed to catch the aquarium, but the water splashed right in his face. Gigi had already caught the cat himself. He quickly checked to see if the fish was still inside, but there wasn't any. Luckily, Yin Yin had already managed to catch her. The boys breathed a sigh of relief. The senior courier immediately scolded the intern for nearly causing an accident. She apologized sincerely. Yuan waved her off, saying it was all fine. Everyone slipped up sometimes. Meanwhile, Smarty was drooling as he stared at the fish. Seeing the mountain of boxes piled up in the store, Yin Yin was stunned. Smarty asked if they were planning to open an ore farm. Yuan explained that only by expanding their scale could they increase their profits. He also couldn't help but notice how strong the new courier girl was. Carrying 2,000 jin of energy ore into the room was no small feat. Yuan told them to go upstairs and play, while he went into seclusion to cultivate. He also informed Smarty that all the materials from the knowledge chip had already been uploaded to his Star Network account, so he should hurry and start studying. The smart guy replied that he understood, and grabbed some cookies before leaving. Yuan, meanwhile, activated the space of the spirit castle. Then it was time to level up the fish. An hour later, the fish no longer fit in the aquarium. Yuan realized that the amount of spiritual ki required to advance from the common rank to the elite rank was several times greater than what the green vine required. However, the spiritual power he received was roughly the same. Now it became clear why the spirit-absorbing goldfish had a bad reputation as a creature that was extremely difficult to cultivate. He wondered how he could move the same amount of spiritual ki into the spirit castle space. 2 days later, the fish was transferred to a large spirit transformation pool where it could swim freely. Mobius was envious, and it wasn't being disturbed. Yuan dumped even more energy ore into the pool, scolding Mobius for not helping. Over the past few days, Yuan had personally hauled over 1,000 jin of ore. Mobius countered that he was still in the state of a spiritual body. Yuan had finally reached his limit. The concentration of the spiritual ki within the spirit castle's space was completely saturated. If Mobius wanted to increase it further, he would have to wait for the next level up. Mobius replied that as long as he could continue to evolve, the upper limit would continue to rise. At that point, it was probably only about 5 times higher than in the outside world. Yuan watched as the spirit-absorbing goldfish continuously absorbed the spiritual ki from the space. He had high hopes for it. It was destined to become the store's future signature item. However, it would be even better if she could awaken the dragon bloodline. That's why he specifically chose the dragon eye breed. Mobius reminded him that this would require the blood of a dragon beast, which would be extremely expensive. Yuan agreed. The biggest problem at the moment was still money. The only solution was to quickly level up the spiritual beings and profit from the price difference as quickly as possible. He pulled out several boxes, prompting Mobius to ask what was in them. Yuan revealed that they were web-spitting spiders. Sales of elite-grade green vines were going well, but he still needed products with more distinctive features. Mobius inquired why the spiders had to be moved into the spirit castle space to level up. Yuan explained that the transformation speed of the spirit key inside the spirit castle space was also 5 times faster than outside. With these words, he set to work. The spiders' quality had been successfully upgraded to epic rank. Yuan breathed a sigh of relief. Upgrading them to epic rank took just over 2 hours. Outside, It would have taken at least 10. At that moment, he received a message on his phone. As expected, one spider was valued at 1.1 shining coins, while the other reached 1.3 shining coins. Inspired, Yuan planned to auction off the remaining 2 as well. His immediate goal was simple: to earn his first small fortune. Mobius commented that Yuan was slowly turning into a miserly hoarder. Then, another notification popped up. Yuan had received a tip of 500 Federation coins from Lord Sun Lin, along with a message encouraging him to keep up the good work and broadcast daily. Yuan was confused. Since when could a store on the Star Network accept donations? Then it dawned on him. He rushed upstairs, from where he could clearly hear Yin Yin singing. The protagonist flung open the door and demanded to know what they were doing together. They both jumped in fright. The smart guy quickly replied that they were studying. Yuan tried to approach the computer to check this statement, but the couple blocked his way. His eyes widened when he discovered they'd become VTubers. The chat was overflowing with praise for her beautiful voice. Many viewers were completely hooked on the song and searched for it on Star Network, only to realize it was the original. They even sent donations. The streamer's chosen name was Kui Yin Luo. Yuan shared the thought that if it weren't for their shared income and expenses, he would never have known they had started their careers behind his back. Yin Yin was very proud of this name. It was perfect for Yin Yin, who loved eating green vines, and it was Smarty's idea. Yuan noticed how proud she was of herself. He wondered how they had chosen the path of virtual streamers. She replied that Smart Guy called this the only way to stand out from the rest in the same niche. Yuan had to question Smarty. Smarty replied that he was tired after several hours of daily study, so he might as well hand over that time to Yin Yin to put it to good use. Noticing that the account had been open for several days, and although there were quite a few comments, there were very few subscribers. And Yin Yin had loved singing since childhood. It was a minor hobby, so he simply let them have their fun. He stopped being angry, as he thought their plan to effectively utilize their quirks and hobbies was a good idea. He hadn't yet realized what a legend Kui Yin Luo would become in the streaming world. The couple was happy to finally have Yuan's permission, but he stipulated that they couldn't accept inappropriate donations. He set a limit of 500 Federation coins. He also wanted them to change direction and become visual voice actors. The two were so delighted that Yin Yin lifted Smarty onto her back and they raced off. Yuan commented that the children had grown up and were no longer obedient. Mobius commented that the pairing was quite amusing. Yuan didn't want to talk about them at the time, as he was worried about how to get him to level up. The concentration of the spiritual ki in space had also reached a bottleneck, but it still couldn't keep up with the consumption of the spiritual beings it nurtured. A prerequisite for its advancement was first cultivating other spiritual beings to a new level. Although he could speed up the process by transforming the spiritual ki, he was limited by his own spiritual ki proficiency rank, so the effectiveness was low. If he wanted to speed up the process, he needed the Mobius level to rise. It was just some kind of vicious cycle. Mobius suggested focusing on high quality since it was costing so much money, but that wasn't an option. Only by improving the quality of a spiritual being could the level of that spiritual being be revealed. He hoped that every spiritual being, without exception, would be able to realize its own value. If the spirit-drinking dragon-eye goldfish was going to advance, it needed at least 3 drops of dragon beast blood and much more. With such demands, he had to call Sister Shin. She answered his call, but was very surprised when she heard that he needed the blood of the dragon beast, because this thing was by no means cheap. But deep down, she was delighted that her instincts had been correct. He was truly worthy of the status of a loyal customer, having spent nearly 5 shining coins on his very first visit to the store. She told him the price. The price of a gold-ranked dragon beast blood was 80 shining coins, while the price of a platinum-ranked dragon beast blood was 2,000 shining coins per drop. If he could take a larger batch, she would give him a discount and a guarantee that the product had not been diluted. His silence made her ask if he was still on the line. In fact, he was on the verge of tears because he couldn't afford it. He cleared his throat and clarified that he was just checking out the prices. Besides that, he wanted to order 4,000 jin of low-grade energy stones and 3 common-rank spirit-absorbing goldfish. She could easily arrange this order for him. After the call, she did the calculations based on the rate of replenishment and estimated that he would need the dragon beast's blood by his next visit. She planned to prepare herself, since she now had such a good client. 2 hours later, there were more fish swimming in the pool. Mobius commented that the delivery was too fast. Yuan had just finished upgrading 5 web-spitting spiders to epic quality, but his earnings over the past few days had dwindled to just 0.4 shining coins again, and the spiritual key in space was more than half used up. He envied these goldfish, living a carefree life, and began feeding them. The very first goldfish in the pool started acting aggressively. Yuan was confused, as the fish had originally lived in the same pool. The transformation pool was only larger, and yet they began to fight. Mobius responded that he had been too naive. He explained that it was natural selection, the survival of the fittest. Evolution, at its core, is the most creative capacity nature bestows upon living beings. So, no matter what kind of spiritual being they were, they would not easily share the spiritual key that fueled them with other spiritual beings, even if they were former kin. Yuan knew that this was precisely why the strong became even stronger, and why the weak found it so difficult to rise. Mobius was glad he had seen the light, though he added that nature was also balanced. The more powerful the individual, the more it must understand coexistence and order. His calm mind temporarily quelled the aggression of the spirit-consuming dragon-eyed goldfish. And barring any unexpected developments, he expected the remaining 3 to evolve to elite rank within 5 days. Yuan entrusted this to him and added more ore. He checked his phone and was pleased to see that the green vines had sold out so quickly. Mobius had just finished upgrading several web spiders, so he decided to replenish his supplies. Yuan realized it was time to make a delivery to the bald-headed man, so he left. He went to his online store and saw someone cursing, even though the store already indicated that the item was sold out. The girl complained that, upon seeing the monk, she had given him her place in line to order, but he had dared to sweep everything clean. The monk simply replied that Buddha had taught them not to rob. She grew even more angry and grabbed him by the lapels. She was furious that she had already helped him, and he still had the audacity to lecture her, so she challenged him to meet in real life. Yuan yelled at them to stop arguing, or else take the squabbles outside his store. He put web-spitting spiders on display. The girl and the monk were shocked. He could tell it was the work of the creator of the 2 stars. The girl couldn't believe how epic the quality was. Yuan clarified that they were custom-made and not for sale. The monk inquired about the terms and conditions for a custom order. Gigi explained that he had temporarily stopped accepting custom orders this month and would not resume doing so until next month. At the same time, the couple asked if he had any more elite-grade green vines left. Unfortunately, they were sold out, and he had no intention of selling them anymore. He introduced them to his next products, which turned out to be copper-rank green vines and elite-rank spirit-absorbing goldfish. He opened pre-orders for them. The girl offered 5 shining coins for a copper-grade green vine. The monk bid 8 shining coins for a spirit-absorbing goldfish. They both wanted the goods reserved for themselves to ensure they wouldn't be stolen. Given their positions, Yuan realized that the 2 were used to making blind purchases, while he even conducted research on market prices. He warned them that if they started arguing again, they would both go straight to the store's blacklist. Little did he know that the 2 were actually secretly working together. Yuan was completely exhausted. He realized he needed to immediately establish store rules and post them in a prominent location. The scene changed. The monk announced that he would be expecting good news from him, then turned and left. Seeing the girl still standing there, Yuan asked if she had any other business. He told her he had no more spiritual beings to sell. She hesitated for a moment before asking if he could heal a spiritual being. This immediately piqued his interest. She explained that it was a spiritual being with a damaged core and severe injuries. Yuan said that if it was below silver rank, he could try. The girl was overjoyed. She said her daughter's spiritual being could finally be saved. Yuan froze when he heard the word daughter. He couldn't quite believe it. She looked about his sister's age. She then revealed a copper-ranked spiritual being belonging to her daughter. During training near a spatial rift, Its roots were burned away by a horned demon. This surprised Yuan. Horned demons possessed horn flames with withering properties. If it struck a plant-type spiritual creature, the damage would be devastating. Now he finally understood why the foundation of the spiritual being was so badly damaged. She thanked him profusely and asked about the cost. She admitted that she didn't have enough money right now, but promised to scrape together the necessary amount by next month. Yuan dismissed this. He didn't have time this month anyway. He told her to bring the spirit creature next month. As for payment, he didn't need money. What he wanted was something else: the soil of rebirth. She was stunned, unable to believe that this alone would be enough. Naturally, she agreed to the deal without hesitation. She promised to get it for him. If she succeeded, they could renegotiate the treatment fee. Yuan was genuinely surprised. Even Sister Shin hadn't been able to obtain the rebirth soil, meaning this woman definitely had connections. Thus, his problem with the soil for regeneration could be considered solved. The issue of the Flora's spring water could be solved with money. All that remained was the mahogany heartwood. He wondered if it could only be obtained through an auction in the treasure pavilion. Deciding not to think too far ahead, Yuan sent a message to Cloudstream, informing her that the web-spitting spiders were ready and that she should hurry. She appeared almost instantly. Yuan was shocked by her speed. She accused him of cheating. How could he have produced 5 epic-quality spiders in just a few days? Even she hadn't expected such agility from him. She assured him that she would immediately roll up the transparent spider silk. After inspecting the goods and confirming their quality, she reported being extremely satisfied and told him to arrange delivery. Her excitement was evident. Yuan reminded her that one of the web-spitting spiders had a deadly poison skill and advised her to be careful with her hair. She immediately snapped back, screaming that she hadn't been stung on purpose and that her hair had already started to grow back. After the payment was transferred, she left. Yuan wondered why she was always so prickly, but at least he had capital again. It was time to expand production. He immediately placed orders for additional materials to keep the cash flow going. The spirit-absorbing butterfly-tailed goldfish were also selling well, and he needed to replenish his supply of green vines. Noticing how Smart Guy's eyes were bulging out of his head, Yuan asked if he had overstrained them from studying for too long. The Smart Guy replied that no, there were simply some concepts he didn't fully understand. He asked about the complexity of the evolution of spiritual beings. Yuan asked him what exactly he meant. The Smart Guy explained that the evolution of spiritual beings wasn't always aimed solely at enhancing their survival or combat abilities. If this were so, spiritual beings would not have been able to sustain themselves during evolution. This theory was abstract and difficult to understand. Yuan tried to come up with a more concrete example, and so he pointed to the green vine, something Smarty was very familiar with, as he ate it every day. Yuan asked him to imagine that he was a green vine, and in what direction he would evolve to ensure his survival. The Smart Guy replied that he would get rid of the leaves to avoid being eaten, and develop toxicity to avoid being accidentally eaten, and would be extremely durable while requiring less water. Yuan instead introduced a poisonous cactus. Then he told Smart Guy that this line of thinking was fundamentally flawed. Smart Guy was shocked. He thought his logic was perfect for survival. Yuan then showed him the evolved form of a copper-ranked green vine. The clever man immediately realized how different it was from what he had imagined. It was fresh, juicy, and truly delicious. It looked like it was begging to be eaten. Yuan explained that the green vine's evolutionary path was tantamount to declaring to all spiritual beings that it could produce food, and very tasty food at that. As a result, other spiritual beings would protect her, nurture her, and ensure her survival. This is how she secured her position in the ecosystem. The Smart Guy muttered that in her place, he'd still prefer to evolve into something completely inedible. The worse the taste, the better. Yuan told him that too much study had narrowed his thinking, which was why he couldn't figure it out, so he suggested going for a walk. Yin Yin was delighted. Once outside, she mentioned that it had been a long time since they had last gone out together. On a huge screen, they watched as the Shining Federation's Creators Guild convened to reform the creator certification system. Ling Zhao announced that anyone who passed the one-star creator assessment within 2 hours could skip 3 peaceful profession skill enhancement assessments and directly challenge the 2-star creator examination. For Yuan, this was simply unbelievable news. It meant he could directly aim for 2 stars. He silently vowed to achieve this rank at all costs. Yin also expressed her support. The next news segment was dedicated to the Federation. Recent research showed that spatial rifts would enter a 6-month active period, during which a wave of exotic beasts would emerge. The Shining Federation was on high alert. Citizens were advised to prepare in advance and not panic. During the active period, the Federation planned to dispatch spirit guardians to assist in repelling a wave of exotic beasts. Images of spirit guardians in full uniform flashed on the screen. Yuan suddenly remembered how, as a child, he would ask his parents where they had gone. They told him to take good care of Shui, saying that they were leaving for a short time and would be back by the time he woke up. But the next day, a wounded man came to tell him about his parents. Shui woke up and asked where their parents were. Yuan had to tell her they weren't coming back. She burst into tears. Yuan hugged her and promised to take care of her. Hugging his sister, he tightly clutched his parents' badges in his hands. Frozen there, as if rooted to the spot, Yuan didn't notice how Yin and Smart Guy were panicking and trying to get his attention. He finally came to, hugged them both, and assured them he was okay. This was their cue to go home. Only then did it dawn on him. The badges his parents wore were symbols of spiritual guardians. Returning home late at night, Yuan immediately sat down at the computer and began searching for information. As he had predicted, the spatial rift that had opened on the outskirts of Xia County 10 years ago had indeed been sealed by the spirit guards. He read several news reports. According to the reports, a powerful energy source had been discovered deep within the rift. Lin Yuan reviewed the news report. At 7 a.m., a rank 4 dragonfly had injured 30 defenders before being suppressed. At 3 p.m., a rank 5 silkworm, skilled in necromancy, appeared. The Captain General soon arrived and sealed the rift. By 8 p.m., the creature was seriously injured, but the ground remained poisoned. There were no civilian casualties, but 120 people were injured and 53 were missing. The rift will be sealed within 72 hours. The rotten-boned silkworm seemed eerily familiar to him. He also read that bone-devouring gangrene was a mutually destructive skill, which the rotten-boned silkworm could only activate by sacrificing itself, having been pushed to the absolute limit. Putting all these pieces together, Yuan realized that Uncle Li was a member of the spiritual guardians, and he realized that his parents were also members of the spiritual guardians. His gaze slowly dropped to the badges left by his parents. The south was lava, the north was icebound, the west was a vast desert, and the east was a swamp. The Shining Federation existed in the narrow chasms between these deadly zones. Countless spiritual beings roamed within and around its borders. The Spiritual Guardians were a security organization responsible for dealing with spiritual-related disasters and exotic beast incursions. Yuan wondered if his parents had served in such a dangerous position. They never mentioned it. He noticed barely legible inscriptions on the badges. After he wiped away the dried blood, the number 2837 appeared. He wondered if that was their serial number among the spirit guardians. He tried to dig deeper into the network, but a red exclamation mark suddenly flashed on the screen. He had stumbled upon a restricted access level. Further online searching was prohibited. He considered asking Aunt Zhang, but she was accompanying Uncle Li to a medical examination. They were old friends of his parents. Yuan suspected they knew the truth. Judging by Uncle Li's injuries, he likely witnessed the events, and perhaps he himself was the spiritual guardian. Suddenly, someone knocked on the front door. It was already late at night. Yuan initially thought Aunt Zhang had returned, but she wouldn't have knocked like that. Shui had been preparing for the 100 Suns trial lately, so she wouldn't have come home, or at least warned him. Even everyone involved with Star Network transactions contacted him by phone. This made Yuan wary, and simultaneously piqued his curiosity about who it could be. The rhythm of the knocking changed, as if it was someone else. The worst-case scenario flashed through his mind. His ability to enhance and evolve spiritual beings had been exposed, and someone had come to kidnap him. Smarty and Yin Yin woke up and asked who was there. Smarty jokingly asked if Yuan had stolen someone else's business. Yuan told him to stop talking nonsense. There was no way he'd crossed anyone. He quietly instructed Yin Yin that if he retreated after opening the door, no matter who entered, she would have to immediately release turbulence and a sonic boom right at the entrance. He opened the door slightly and asked who they were looking for. A man and a woman stood outside. The man asked if he was Lin Jian and Qiu Yan's child. Yuan asked if they knew his parents. The woman immediately pulled out her badge, clearly knowing he'd recognize it. She said softly that she hadn't expected it to grow so much. She introduced herself. They were spiritual guardians. Her name was Su Jin, though she preferred to be called Aunt Su. The man next to her was Dong Hai. He asked if Yuan had recently tried to access the Spirit Guardian's internal database. That's how they tracked him down. That confirmed it all. His parents really were members of the Spiritual Guardians. Dong Hai said it was a long story. The aftermath of that battle was extremely chaotic. At the time, many Spiritual Guardians were carrying out missions under hidden identities, complicating subsequent investigations. The headquarters' subsequent investigations still left unresolved gaps. They apologized for arriving so late. He then handed Yuan a bloody piece of cloth. Yuan asked what it was. Dong Hai replied that it was for the future Yuan and Xiao. There were writings on the cloth. Yuan instantly recognized the handwriting. It was his mother's. Dong Hai explained that the Spiritual Guardian's missions were incredibly dangerous. That's why Aunt Zhang and Uncle Li decided to hide the truth from him. All these years, they'd silently accompanied and protected the siblings. He hoped Yuan wouldn't blame them. Rubbing his eyes, Yuan replied that he didn't blame them. If anything, it was thanks to them that he and his sister were able to grow up safely. Dong Hai, who told him to call him Uncle Dong, also promised to always have his back. If Yuan ever needed help, he could come to him. Aunt Su cleared her throat, reminding Uncle Dong of something important. And he actually reached into his shirt. This item had been bartered using all the merits his parents had accumulated, as well as repeated requests from old Zhang and the others. Yuan asked what the item was. Uncle Dong told him it was the seed of the origin. Yuan asked what that meant. Aunt Su explained that the spatial rifts not only brought forth waves of exotic beasts, but also gave birth to various treasures known as origin-type items. Only when a source-type item was extracted would the rift be completely sealed. The source seed was one such item, a source-type treasure capable of sealing a second-level spatial rift. Uncle Dong thought the original seed was a perfect match for Yuan. He'd heard from old Li that Yuan had suffered a cultivation accident as a child, leaving him weak. Making contracts with spiritual beings consumed a lot of energy, but the original seed only required fresh blood to grow. It didn't depend on mental strength or spiritual energy. The protagonist carefully examined the seed, and Aunt Su explained that a spiritual being could be grown from the original seed. His abilities and development path could be freely directed during cultivation. Due to Yuan's poor health, she suggested cultivating him into a healing-type spiritual being. This would greatly benefit his body in the future. The healing type also matched Yuan's current predisposition, but pure healing alone wasn't enough to survive in that world. Yuan knew he still needed fighting power, just like Daisy, also known as White. Auntie Sue handed him a Federal Central Bank card. It contained 100 shining coins. She said it was a gift, as well as compensation for a 10-year delay. Uncle Dong also gave him one, knowing that cultivating the original seed and paying for Yuan's sister's tuition would be expensive. He told Yuan to treat it as interest for the past 10 years. Yuan refused to take their money. He opened the door and said that there was always someone behind. The smart guy jumped on his head, and the main character said that he had 2 wonderful families. Uncle Dong, who had lived at least 20 years longer than Yuan, gave him advice. He insisted that Yuan accept the money. Aunt Su noticed that Yuan had only recently recovered physically. She guessed that Smarty and Yin Yin were only at the elite level. His peers had already reached bronze rank or higher, so it seemed that Yuan lacked actual combat experience. She asked him if he wanted to know more about his parents' work. In Xie Prefecture, there was a first-level spatial rift connected to the spiritual beast realm. If Yuan wanted, She could take him along to show him how the spirit suppression division worked. Even though it was only the first level, it still carried some risk. Before she could finish speaking, Yuan said he wanted to go. He believed they already knew about his past condition. He'd missed too much of this world, and with this opportunity before him, he didn't want to waste it. Within 6 months, the spatial rift was expected to become active. A wave of beasts was approaching, so advanced preparation was a wise choice. Auntie Sue thought Yuan showed promise. She believed he had talent. Uncle Dong quietly warned her that they should be more careful. She nudged him to shut him up, telling him to clear out the insectoids while she stayed close to protect Yuan. She told Yuan to get ready because they were leaving immediately. Yuan checked the characteristics of her spiritual beast. It was a fluffy, snowy owl from the family Nadpiperidae, genus Snowy Owl. It was a platinum rank, 8 out of 10, with attributes of wind and ice. Yuan was shocked. A normal summon was already platinum ranked and possessed so many skills. He'd assumed it was a protective spiritual beast. It truly lived up to the Spirit Suppression Division's reputation. Yin gazed at the giant bird in awe and asked if she could one day become as strong. Yuan promised to train them with all his might. Smarty also wanted to go with them. Yuan asked Uncle Dong if he could take the 2 little ones with him. Uncle Dong agreed, as he intended to protect them anyway. They were both thrilled to ride such a large bird. Yin liked how it felt like velvet. The main character asked if she even knew what velvet felt like. Yin replied that she didn't know, but that's how it felt in her imagination. Soon, they were flying through the sky. They finally arrived at a spatial rift. The military stopped them and told them that entry was prohibited to outsiders. Uncle Dong stated his full name and unit affiliation, and then requested access to the restricted area to conduct a basic cleansing operation. After confirming his identity, they were allowed to enter. They flew forward. This territory was already within reach of the spatial rift. There were so many purple thorn guards stationed there, Yuan promised himself to remain cautious. Suddenly, loud noises erupted around them. Yin and Smarty clung tightly to Yuan. A spirit beast suddenly appeared behind them. This wasn't very good. Uncle Dong punched him. Yuan watched in shock as Uncle Dong crushed the insectoid with one blow, using only the spiritual energy tempered within his body. At that moment, he truly understood the power of the spirit suppression unit. Aunt Sue told him not to be nervous. Most of the insectoids were only elite level. Only a few had reached the bronze rank. Despite this, Yuan knew that elite level enemies were already dangerous to him. Uncle Dong stepped forward. He summoned his wolf-like spirit beast. He placed it right in the center of the battlefield. Yuan felt uneasy when he saw that the beast was surrounded on all sides. Uncle Dong told him to take his time. He said the beast needed a little time to prepare. He then ordered the pack to begin hunting. The spirit beast was a shadow direwolf from the Dark Fang clan's direwolf lineage. It was a monarch-ranked beast, 10 out of 10, with outstanding quality and a wealth of skills. Yuan was deeply impressed. The skill set and trait were perfect for long battles with high burst damage. Just watching the battle made the entire trip worth it. In the blink of an eye, the enemies were destroyed. Uncle Dong told Yuan that it was completely harmless. Yuan noticed that Yin was acting strange, so he asked her what was wrong. She said someone was watching them. She was right. There was a crow nearby. Its eyes were red, its chest was cut open, and white bones were visible through it. Yuan still believed the trip would be safe. Smarty felt relieved to hear this. Yin suddenly jumped out of Yuan's arms and warned him to be careful. She said something was wrong. Yuan shouted at her to stop. It was then that he realized that Aunt Sue and Uncle Dong had disappeared. A strange feeling came over him. Looking again, he realized that he was riding on the back of a terrifying giant crow. The scene changed, and the rift appeared before them again. Uncle Dong said he felt uneasy. Aunt Sue reminded him to remain vigilant, because it seemed like something was still waiting for them. He complained that she had jinxed him. She told Yuan to stay put while they dealt with the minor threats, assuring him there was nothing to worry about. Her fluffy snow owl unleashed a snow feather spike. Several spirit beasts were destroyed at once. Uncle Dong thought that this was the most dangerous situation they could face that day. But Aunt Sue sensed something was wrong. Yuan hadn't moved for a long time, so she ordered Uncle Dong to check on him. When Uncle Dong checked, Yuan's face looked normal, and his breathing was even. He told her that Yuan was simply sleeping. In reality, Yuan's consciousness was falling into the abyss. Yin Yin shouted at him to grab onto her, so he grabbed her little paws. The smart guy told her to hold on tight. She tried her best, but couldn't hold on, and they all fell down. Yuan felt strange. It didn't feel like he was falling from a height. Instead, it felt like the ground was welcoming him. Since he wasn't hurt at all, he wondered if the enemy hadn't wanted him dead. A voice told him he was right. He said that the creatures outside the rift controlled all the lands and resources, while those inside had to fight and bleed just to survive. It was that same crow. She offered him a bet. If the crow won, Yuan would have to stay there forever. Yuan was shocked that she could speak, but the crow didn't want to talk anymore. She was angry that they continued to call her an insectoid when she didn't even have the right to live peacefully outside the rift. The spirit beast summoned a group of wolves. Yin Yin attacked with turbulence. She shouted at her to stay away from Yuan. The clever man boasted that they also had a big bird and a big wolf on their side. At the mention of these spirit beasts, the crow created creepy copies of Aunt Sue and Uncle Dong. She used her power to bind Yin Yin and Smarty. The wolves surrounded them as their strength slowly waned. They shouted at Yuan to run. Yuan enveloped them in a golden aura and told them to calm their minds. The clever man was confused by what was happening. Yuan realized everything around him was an illusion. Uncle Dong and Aunt Sue weren't actually there. They disappeared because the crow couldn't pull them into the illusion. The crow was called the Three-Crow Lord of the Corvidae family. He was an elite rank, level 2, a normal quality psychic type. He was shocked that Yuan had seen through him. He never expected a human child to escape his control. This only made him more determined to kill the boy. Smarty asked if the attacks were also illusions. Yin Yin said they felt real. Yuan told them the damage was real. The Three-Crow Lord warned them that his next attack would not be a fake. Yuan noted that his technique was a near-perfect replica of the skills of elite-class spirit beasts. Yuan instructed Yin Yin to use turbulence to attack their legs. Then, Smarty was to strike their faces when they opened. He explained that they were illusionary clones, so they should be weak. Yin Yin followed his order. The smart guy rushed forward and scratched them. To their shock, the clones were completely unharmed. Yuan told the Three-Crow Lord that fighting like this was pointless, and that he would not be able to win. But the crow disagreed. Yuan was a human, and he had spirit beasts. He, on the other hand, was an anomalous insect, possessing nothing. Suddenly, the crow leveled up within the illusion and rushed towards Yuan, shouting that battle brings satisfaction, destruction creates justice, and slaughter restores balance. She raged about how people enjoyed food and clean air, while the creatures inside the rift killed each other just to survive. The wolf was about to bite Yuan. The original seed suddenly slipped out of his pocket. Yin Yin and Smart Guy were also depressed. The crow believed that survival led only to pain, and destruction was the path to eternity. Suddenly, a golden light broke through the wolves. The crow froze in shock. What was going on? Yuan was unharmed. The original seed actively resisted the illusion. Yuan realized that the crow's power could strengthen nearby spirit beasts, but that same power could be turned against her. The little animals were already around him. He told Yin Yin to strike her weak spot and finish her off. They already knew where it was. They rushed forward. The crow's body was cut into pieces. She looked disappointed, as if she had hoped that her luck would change. But Yuan won. Yuan saw the rune of slaughter within her remains. He wondered if the true nature of exotic beasts was endless killing. After that, Uncle Dong woke him up by patting his shoulder and said that they were returning. He asked if the flock of crows had frightened him. Yuan opened his eyes and said no. Uncle Dong told Aunt Sue that Yuan looked exhausted. Yuan asked Uncle Dong where he should train if he wanted to become stronger. Uncle Dong advised him to go to the Star Tower, the best place for real combat training. The scene changed. It was deep night. Smarty and Yin Yin were fast asleep. Yuan removed the seed from the pot containing the kernels. He recalled what had happened within the illusion. The seed changed only after it absorbed his blood. Now he knew what it would look like after evolution. And he also knew that blood was required to form a contract with it. That's why he cut his hand. He let the blood drip onto the seed and decided to take a chance, hoping that it would become a spiritual being with attacking power. He was shocked at how quickly it absorbed his blood. Suddenly, he heard a loud voice in his mind, urging him to continue and not stop. They were now mentally linked, and Yuan could feel the all-consuming hunger radiating from him. He had lost so much blood that his face had turned pale. He relied on lawyer's lily to slow the bleeding. Eventually, it stopped. The seed grew into a plant. He didn't expect it would require so much blood. Since it was plant-like, he thought it might have something like the mouth of a carnivorous plant, as he had seen in the illusion. What appeared before him was a strange, humanoid plant. He had a rose-like flower for a head, and a wide, sharp-toothed grin. Yuan stared at him in amazement. This was exactly what he wanted. From that moment on, he named it Red Thorn. He tried to feed it a carrot, but it shook its head. He tried to give it the core, but it refused again. Yuan grew nervous. He was afraid it wanted more of his blood, and he knew he couldn't bear it again. The smart guy woke up and told him to get some sleep. Yuan replied that he was fine. He knew that Smarty and Yin Yin were exhausted after yesterday. The smart guy noticed the plant and realized it was similar to the one from the illusion. Yuan introduced it as Red Thorn, their new companion. The smart guy was delighted. He asked if it would be as strong as it had been then. Feeling a little jealous, he also asked if he himself would become stronger. Yuan warned him not to rush. Smarty was still only at the elite rank. As soon as he reached the copper level, a major transformation occurred, and he reached a completely new level. Yin Yin woke up and asked what they were talking about. Yuan suggested that they all rest and recover for now, so that they could prepare for the breakthrough to the copper level. A week later, they gathered in the backyard. Yuan's body had recovered greatly, while cultivating the original seed, and his spiritual energy had also become purer. Breaking through to the copper level should no longer be difficult. Golden energy enveloped Yin Yin. Smarty watched with his mouth open. She evolved into a blue sparrow, a member of the blue sparrow family of the genus of winged birds. She reached the copper level, 1 of 10. Yuan felt a sense of confusion. Normally, there should have been a songbird stage between her old form and this one, but Yin Yin had barely changed at the elite level, and her appearance remained the same. It felt like she'd skipped a step entirely. Now it was time to choose her trait. The options were oily feathers, which reduced damage by coating her feathers in oil, a clear sky that dispersed the clouds and cleared the sky after her song ended, and a borrowed wind that reduced stamina consumption during flight. In the end, he chose a clear sky. The smart guy told Yin Yin that she now looked more graceful. Yin Yin was delighted. She said she could now sing and dance at the same time during her live broadcasts. The smart guy perked up and declared it was his turn. Yuan told him to take his time. When the process began, Smart Guy looked uncomfortable. Yuan was about to suggest stopping, but Smart Guy insisted on continuing. Yuan finished everything as quickly as he could. Smarty's spiritual energy was very stable, so Yuan believed there would be no problems. Suddenly, Smarty told him to wait. His nose itched. When he sneezed, his appearance changed. Yuan was disappointed by how unsightly this evolution looked. Yin Yin encouraged Smarty to test himself and brought a mirror. Smarty was delighted. He said he now looked like a scientist. A trait selection appeared with 3 options. The first was dust protection, the second was item shape, and the third was increased pain. Smarty suggested choosing the item shape. Yuan asked if he was sure. Smarty explained that he wasn't a combat-type spiritual being, so the other 2 options wouldn't be much help in combat. Yuan thought this explanation was brutally honest. The smart guy rushed towards him and threatened that if he turned into something useless, he would cut off his own tail and be done with it. He was now a copper level, 1 of 10. Yuan activated the item's form. Smarty transformed into a pair of glasses. Smarty was disappointed. Yuan told him they wouldn't know their true power until he put them on. Yuan put on his glasses. When he looked at Yin Yin, information appeared. It showed that she was content with her evolution. It also revealed her thoughts, such as how she longed for chestnuts and bread with meat string from the neighboring street. There was even a reminder telling Yuan not to forget to preen her feathers. He was deeply impressed. Then he noticed something else. Redthorn's thoughts contained only one thing: an aberrant insect. Yuan realized that this was precisely what Redthorn wanted to eat. The scene suddenly changed. Sister Jin answered Yuan's call and told him she had insect corpses and could give them to him for free. Even 100 wouldn't be a problem. After the call, she sank into thought. This time, Yuan hadn't asked for spiritual materials. Instead, he needed insect corpses. This made her curious about what kind of breeding base he was building, and she began to think about giving him a little test. Yuan didn't expect she'd actually have the insects. It was Smarty who told him she'd have them. He soon received the delivery. He fed one of the insect corpses to Redthorn, but Redthorn swallowed everything in the bucket in one sitting. After eating, he began to glow. Yuan wondered if he was about to evolve. Redthorn was a carnivorous plant of the Romanov family, the Rafflesiaceae. Its specialty was the ritual maw, which allowed it to secrete vast quantities of digestive fluid. The liquid was extremely caustic and could quickly digest the energy from food. He dumped the remaining contents of the bucket directly into his mouth. Yin complained that he had terrible manners. The smart guy added that his saliva was also caustic, making him quite dangerous. Yuan assured them that he only behaved that way because he was starving, so there was nothing to worry about. Yuan realized his appetite was terrifying. The 300 corpses he'd purchased would last him 3 days at most, especially with the addition of dragon beast blood. He began to wonder if the cash flow from his small online store could keep up. When he checked his balance, he had 398.2 shining coins. This was a huge amount. He noticed that the spirit absorption goldfish and copper rank green vines were selling surprisingly well. He needed to replenish his supplies again. A new message arrived from Cloudstream. She complained that she could not find a single transparent web and demanded that he send 5 more as soon as possible. Immediately afterward, she transferred the money. Yuan commented that she had terrible luck. Because of her order, he now had to replenish his supply of web-scattering spiders. Yin and Smarty overheard him and immediately demanded he take them with him. Yuan asked why, since he was just going to pick up some goods. Yin explained that ever since they returned from the spatial rift, they wanted to know how strong they really were. The smart guy added that they didn't want to be left helpless again if they encountered exotic insects. Yuan joked that if that was the case, then the next time Xia County was suddenly hit by a crisis, they would become shining heroes. Yin was delighted, saying this would make them unique in the Federation. Smarty, however, said that wasn't true. He then told them a story. 2 years ago, in the Frost City of the Shining Federation, a member of the Shining 100 sequence, ranked 39th, encountered a third-class spatial rift alone. He single-handedly held off the wave of insects for 30 minutes, preventing Frost City from turning into a living hell. Yuan was impressed that Smart Guy even knew about such a thing. Smart Guy said he read old news articles when he was tired of studying. Yin asked what happened to that 100 sequence member afterward. Meanwhile, inside the store, one of the employees argued with the boss about whether it was worth pinning their hopes on a store that had suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Sister Jin asked if they had any complaints about her sales strategy. The staff complained that she had spent a huge amount of money purchasing dragon beast blood and was now buying insect corpses en masse. The buyer, she claimed, was just a newly opened store in the Star Network. They thought this was unreasonable. They were worried that if she was cheated, they wouldn't even be able to pay the following month's salaries. At that moment, Yuan entered and noticed that they were in a lively mood. He asked if he had come at an inopportune time, as it seemed they were arguing. Sister Jin smiled and said that it was just a normal meeting to plan the main products for the next quarter, and everyone was just sharing opinions. Yuan didn't ask any further. He told her he wanted to buy 3,000 insect corpses, and a whole bunch of other stuff, tens of thousands of each item. He paid everything in advance. The staff turned pale upon hearing the size of the order and the advance payment. Sister Shin asked why they were still standing idle. She introduced Yuan as a partner in their new store and told them to give him VIP treatment. The staff immediately became inspired and helped him with everything. Sister Shin had already guessed that he would replenish his stock of ordinary rank spirit absorption goldfish, but she believed he would be interested in something more special. She carried out the pregnant elite spirit absorption goldfish mother, 5 fortune ranchu. Yuan was stunned. Spirit-absorbing goldfish could produce over 1,000 offspring in a single pregnancy. Without sufficient spiritual energy, most of the eggs usually did not survive. But within the spiritual pond of the spiritual castle's spatial zone, survival wouldn't be a problem at all. Moreover, the 5 Fortunes Ranch was extremely popular. Yuan took it without hesitation. He also asked for the dragon beast blood he'd ordered earlier. Sister Shin smiled, pleased that her guess had been correct. She suspected that a master of creation was behind Yuan's shop. Anyone capable of handling the pregnant 5 Fortunes Ranchu had to be at least a 2-star master or higher. The prices were quickly sorted out. There were plenty. Having completed the deal, Yuan left. The employees escorted him out personally, now fully aware that they had underestimated Sister Jin's connections. Smarty asked where they were headed next. Yuan asked if they still wanted to test their strength. If so, they could go to the Star Tower Uncle Dong had mentioned. The Star Tower was one of the most unique structures in the Star Network. It offered training, simulated battles, and ranking matches. It also hosted numerous combat-related competitions and was known as a haven for martial spirits. The smart guy stared at the towering structure. Players could only climb 1 floor per victory, and they had to battle at least once a month. He'd heard there was a promotion match on the 100th floor. Completing it would allow them to enter the rankings and become Hall of Fame level players. Yuan told him he was getting ahead of himself. Reaching the 100th floor on their first ascent was impossible. Yuan informed the staff that this was his first time registering. The employee didn't even look up. Reading his book, he told Yuan to fill out the form himself, and said they would enter the information later. He warned Yuan not to disturb him, as the Master of Creation exam was about to take place. The smart guy frowned at the lack of hospitality, but Yuan understood. With the exam approaching, everyone was under pressure. The form was successfully submitted. Yuan was told to stand still until the scan was complete. The results showed all spirits, but records, matches, wins, losses, and highest floor were all 0. The employee was surprised by Yuan's spirit beasts. He couldn't even recognize some of them. Smart Guy commented that he seemed to be the only one who had aged over the years. Yuan had originally wanted Lily to participate in the competition, but releasing the spatial zone of the Mobius Spiritual Castle was technically part of his own ability. Yin asked what floor they needed to reach to encounter opponents at the level of the Shining 100 sequence. Yuan told her not to be so ambitious. She said she was just curious. The employee replied that it had to be at least above the 100th floor. He added that several unusual incidents had occurred over the past 2 days, so it would be best not to encounter these people during their first visit to the Star Tower. Yuan wondered if this meant there was a chance to challenge strong opponents early on. Yin was already looking forward to it. They entered the player preparation room. Inside, they could even customize the battlefield and weather conditions. The opponents would be matched based on their first battle. Their first opponent was a battle-hardened veteran with 471 matches under his belt. Yin asked if that meant he was strong. Yuan thought probably not, as his highest floor was only the 3rd. This meant he was likely to be crushed in every match. The battlefield was open meadows in the morning. The weather was sunny, with no special equipment in place. Yuan decided to send Smarty out first. His exaggerated gestures caused Smarty to complain that Yuan had been watching too many cartoons. The old man on the other side looked like he could barely stand. He was glad to have run into a newcomer. If he won this match, he wouldn't have to fight again for the rest of the month. Smarty tried to switch places with Yin, but Yuan whispered to him to just get it over with. The old man warned them not to underestimate the bond between him and his gray-shelled beetle. He ordered him to use the small beetle. Yuan was about to command Smarty to use his skill, but Smarty had already made his move. He simply stepped on him. The old man let out a wail, accusing the young men of heartlessness. He said he had raised him with care and now had to bury his own child. The smart guy countered that this was precisely why he'd wanted to switch places earlier. Yuan quickly tried to calm the old man, explaining that the spiritual beings weren't actually harmed within the star network. Despite this, Yuan felt disappointed. The match turned out to be of a much lower standard than he had imagined. The system generated the next arena. It was night in a ruined city. The man released his yellow-spotted dog and ordered it to take up the scent so that the enemy could not escape. At the same time, he commanded the fanged boar to use a tusk charge, aiming straight for the vulnerable spot. Yuan calmly instructed Yin Yin to use Sonic Pierce. Yin Yin struck both spirit beasts at the same time. The man cried out in bewilderment, wondering where a copper-ranked spiritual being had even come from on this floor. Yuan could only smile apologetically in response. As Yuan was teleported to another area, he replayed the man's words in his head. Even when he got to that floor, he didn't fully understand what he meant. Yuan wanted Smarty to join the next match, but Smarty refused. He felt deeply disappointed. For more than 10 matches in a row, Umnik hadn't managed to do anything before the fights ended. Yuan tried to console him, saying that they would eventually encounter an opponent of equal strength. He then checked the information about the enemy on the next floor. He turned out to be 27-year-old Huang Chenglin, a power-type Reiki practitioner. He possessed 3 copper-ranked spiritual beings: a poisonous fire python, an acidic fog python, and a swamp python. He openly displayed their characteristics, clearly being absolutely confident in his abilities. This instantly delighted Smarty and Yin Yin. Finally, he had a chance to show what he was capable of. They entered the arena. The animals were on the man again. Chenglin looked surprised to see Yuan appear. He'd assumed the newcomer would have given up and retreated by now. After checking Yuan's profile, he thought he might be an expert until he saw that Yuan only brought a cat and a bird with him. He mockingly asked if they were there for a tour. This confused our protagonist and even his pets. Worse, Yuan was a professional healer. Chenglin chuckled, noting that the bird might as well have built a nest on the battlefield so that people could feed on its eggs and recuperate. Yuan felt his patience snap. He told Chenglin he was talking too much and added that he was ready to start at any moment. Chenglin laughed, noting that he'd never expected to encounter a newcomer so eager to lose. He declared that he hadn't come here to play a game of fisticuffs with the newcomer, and intended to finish the fight using only half his strength. As Yuan suspected, the contractor's mental state directly affected his spiritual beings. Chenglin's relaxed attitude made his snakes sluggish and careless. Yuan ordered Yin Yin to use Sonic Pierce again, aiming for the stomachs of all 3 snakes. She rushed past them and dropped her sharp feathers. To Yuan's surprise, one of the snakes blocked the attack by spraying acid mist. Chenglin grinned and said he would have been much more cautious if that little cat had joined the battle. But since the cat had transformed into glasses, he didn't take the bird's attack seriously. Yuan shouted back, telling him not to underestimate them. He ordered Yin Yin to charge forward and punch the acid mist python in the nose. Chenglin assumed Yen was simply rushing to his death. He casually commanded the poisonous fire python to release a stream of flames, adding that Yuan should be grateful they were in the star network. Otherwise, this little bird wouldn't even have a grave. Yuan replied that there was no need to worry about that. He ordered Mobius to open the spiritual castle's spatial zone. The flame caught up with Yin Yin. Chenglin's eyes widened when he saw Yin Yin, instead of retreating, run straight into one of his snakes. Yuan advised him to stop holding back, as he himself was about to give it his all. He pulled out Lily and activated her healing skill. Chenglin cast a cold glance and coldly warned him so that he wouldn't blame him later for his ruthlessness. The blue snake lunged forward. Yuan shouted at Yin Yin to dodge. The snake released a blue breath, forcing Yin Yin to retreat desperately. Yuan instantly realized the problem. It was a battle of 1 against 3. Yin Yin was alone on the field, and the pace of the battle was too fast. Even the healing spiritual key wouldn't last long. The smart guy suddenly spoke up, announcing that the analysis of the components of the aerosol from the poisonous fire python and acid fog python had been successfully completed. He even understood how they worked. They finally had a way to strike back. Yuan immediately ordered Yin Yin to strike the poisonous fire python's eyes. They were going to eliminate one of them first. As the green snake was releasing mist towards her, Yin Yin flew straight towards the red snake. Chenglin dismissed this as a useless ploy. He commanded the poison fire python to intensify the flames, while the acid mist python cut off her escape route. Yin Yin was trapped between two snakes, but Yuan seized the opportunity and commanded Yin Yin to use the turbulence. Yin Yin flapped her wings furiously, pushing back both the fire and the fog. A stream of flame rushed towards the green snake. When it mixed with the surrounding fog, it caused a powerful explosion. The green snake was instantly roasted alive. Chenglin clicked his tongue in irritation and cursed it for being useless. Yuan praised Yin Yin, finally realizing that real combat required strategy, not brute force. A bitter memory flashed through Chenglin's mind. He had once been thrown out and told to give up his dream of becoming a vassal of the Cheng family. His entire value lay in sitting in the Star Tower, stalking any small fry who might one day threaten the young master. Panic overwhelmed him. He simply couldn't afford to lose here.